Thank you. And Betsy, we call the roll, please.
That all board members are in attendance this evening.
Okay, thank you. Next item is approval of the agenda. You all have the copy of the agenda for tonight's meeting. Need a motion to approve the agenda as presented in your board packet tonight.
So moved.
Thank you, Brandon. A second, please.
Second.
Thank you, Rick. And all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Items coming from closed session tonight, we have a couple. We have minutes to approve tonight, February 11th, right, Susan, is the amended one? Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. We have minutes from February 19th, February 24th, March 4th, and March 10th of 2010 is presented in your board packet tonight, and February 11th as amended.
2014.
I'm sorry?
2014.
What did I say?
2010.
Oh, March 10th, 2014. All those were from 2014. And then as amended, February 11th, 2014 tonight. So I need a motion to approve those board closed session minutes.
So moved.
Thank you. And a second, please.
Second.
Thank you. Steve, and call the roll, please.
Kopp.
Yes.
Maddox.
Yes.
Peter Meyer.
Yes.
Weitzel.
Yes.
Worley. Yes. Carter.
Yes.
Nusis.
Yes. First thing we have tonight is a public hearing regarding repair of school grounds and the Ball Chatham School District. Mr. Murphy.
The purpose of the hearing is, as we indicate, is to undertake repairs to bus lanes and adjacent walkways. What we have experienced in the last 12 months is a decay in our bus lanes at the high school and also at GMS. We'll have pictures for you a little later. But we'd like you to consider using health by safety funds for repair of the bus lanes.
Board members, any questions on the items? As you can see in your board packet and on the board here, we're talking, as Mr. Murphy said also, we're talking about pavement of playgrounds, school bus turnarounds, student drop-off areas, sidewalks, and parking areas at Glenwood High School, Glenwood Middle School, and to receive any public comments regarding such repairs. So, board members, any questions?
The actual discussion of the specific projects will occur later on during the agenda. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And this is so we can use health, life, safety money?
Correct.
And where is that money coming from?
There's two sources. One would be the money left over from the 2010 bond sale, and the other would be your money that you get every year through the levy.
And we've got $1 million somewhere in that neighborhood left over from the 2010 bond sale.
Correct.
Do we talk about alternative options and the pros and cons of this recommendation now or later on in the agenda?
No.
Now?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, if you're talking about, you're on the item, you've opened the public hearing.
Yes.
And so now you're on the item, so it's
Okay.
appropriate to talk about it now.
Well, I have concerns about this, and the reason why I do have concerns is because I do not think that all options have been adequately analyzed and information provided for tonight's meeting. Specifically, I had written an email to Carrie on March 8th asking her to speak to Stifel about the possibility of refunding of the $1 million in health life safety bonds, which remain unspent, to see if we could somewhat mitigate the rather serious and unfortunate error that we have paid almost $150,000 in interest expense on this $1 million that has been sitting in our savings account earning about 1/2 of 1%. Now, I have no information to provide tonight, And Carrie, do you have any information that you could provide?
Yeah, you had asked that Ann respond, and Ann said that she would like to speak face-to-face to explain the
Okay,
situation.
actually, Carrie, I wrote that email to you over 2 weeks ago.
And
Then again, on Wednesday during the Finance Committee meeting, I
Right.
asked you if
And
you
when
had
we-
followed up.
And when you asked those questions, we had explained in the board meeting as well as in the Finance Committee, we had explained that the bond and interest levy is automatically filled because you had expressed some interest in doing other things with the bond and interest levy, and or paying back those bonds, and we said that those are automatically filled, and so that's something that is separate from the other levies.
And then I said to you, I would appreciate an email from Stifel relative to that statement.
You did.
And we have not seen that.
You did, and that's when Ann said that she would like to address it face-to-face.
When did you forward my email to Ann?
After you asked today.
Okay, well, it's really unfair to ask a consultant 6 hours before a meeting to provide some analytic review of what I consider to
I asked when I received your email asking for her email about that issue.
But I'm not going to quibble, Carrie, but basically, I'm not going to quibble, but the sum and substance is, about 2 weeks ago, I brought this question forward, and specifically for tonight's meeting, and I have no information that I would like to share. I have my own personal calculation of what I consider to be an egregiously expensive interest expense on money that sat in our savings account. And what I would like to do is mitigate to the best of our ability, whatever that option may be, to mitigate the seriousness of this error. And to me,
what error is this? I don't understand what kind of error you're talking about.
Well, the error is that we had $1 million sitting in a savings account that we all presumed had been spent on some health life safety project for which the district has received a benefit, whether it's new bathrooms.
Well, we're talking about that benefit now.
And we're talking about spending that money now that you said we should have spent.
But what you're doing is you will then be paying interest expense on interest expense.
That's not true.
That is exactly true. Because
Why is that? Why would we be paying interest expense on interest
in essence,
expense?
we have been penalized by keeping this money in a bank. We're paying interest expense at 5.95%, and we're getting 0.5% in our savings account.
I understand your concern. I think your concern is that we didn't spend it back then.
My concern
and now we're asking to spend that money.
No, my concern is we made a bad error. Let's try and figure out what options mitigate the costliness of that error.
Well, actually, we had not. Didn't we have $9.6 million worth of repairs for that money? And that's why you have to sell bonds in certain dollar amounts. You can't just say I want 9.635, whatever it is.
Correct. And we talked on that in the construction committee. Could you elaborate on what the issue was with that extra $1 million that was left over?
During the course of construction, we did a lot of in-house projects. We were able to save a lot of money, and Mike, you can step into this.
To sell, you have to pay the bond house a certain percentage. So I don't know what those figures would be, but I imagine that.
And Ann's willing to address that.
Okay.
That's all. No, I don't know the figures either. I expected to have some figures available so that I could have reviewed them and given a presentation. I don't feel like we have the whole picture.
I guess, and that's where I need to clarify that I didn't understand that you were saying you didn't want to I didn't understand if that was your point, that you're saying we should have spent it back then, but now that we're asking, I didn't know that you needed to know that information before you said, I'm willing to spend it now.
Well,
So I assumed that what we were doing was something that you would find almost a solution to what your concern was, is that we had sold some bonds for, this extra $1 million that we hadn't used yet, and I thought you were saying we do need to use it, and that's when, Dave is saying that we want to use this money for
Actually,
repairs that we need.
Here's what my email said. Therefore, more information is needed to further analyze the district's options. I would encourage such information gathering before just spending the money.
And we had addressed that.
My email is dated March 6th.
What kind of information do you need
It's all outlined.
What kind of information do you need to
Okay.
to make repairs to the district?
Well,
to make these repairs?
You know what? You got a copy of this email, Jim. Did you read it? Did you read it?
I saw it. My question to you, though, is what other information do you need in order to allow repairs to the district to be made with the money that we already have?
I need this. Can we refund the HLS bond money, or are we required to spend the entire balance? Although Stifel may recommend to refinance it and wrap it in,
Understand.
Okay, I am not in favor of, because already we've increased the outstanding principal amount by about $150,000, and we would now be paying interest expense on money that has not had its intended useful purpose. All I'm trying to find out is there any possibility that we can mitigate this error? And it is an error. How would we mitigate it? Well, we need to find out what our options are relative to basically maybe refunding, calling them. We don't have the necessary information. And that's the sum and substance of my difficulty tonight. And I note that I wrote the initial email on March 6th. So, I'm making my presence known. If you all want to, I'm stating it now.
Well, and we had addressed that a couple of times, both here in open session as well as in Finance Committee, about that the bonds have certain dates on which they're callable, we had that conversation about that it's automatically...
What are those dates, Carrie?
Well, I don't have the schedule in front of me.
Because we didn't get into the detail.
Well, we do have the schedule, and I sent that to you when you asked for it, and I posted it online. And so that information is all there. But I guess what my understanding was that you thought we needed to have spent that money, and so when Dave was coming with something that we need, the asphalt repairs, that I thought that was something that you would find to be accurate, or to be a good remedy an acceptable solution to your concern about not having spent the money.
Here's my frustration. I spent a lot of time calculating the interest expense that we paid unnecessarily for no benefit received. I thought about what our possible options are relative to this error, and...
Well, what are the options, if you've calculated that?
That's where I need Stifel's help.
Well, you just said you calculated those.
Stifel will be here on Thursday. Do you have any issues with us delaying this vote until next month, until after we hear from Stifel?
I think there are some. I think we do have some problems with it because we've got some.
Bring it back forward in front of the board.
We've got some safety issues out there that have to be addressed.
The issue is, all I'm doing tonight is asking for your permission to make a repair using Health by Safety Fund.
But if they're not comfortable with that, if they want to delay that for a meeting, or delay it until we have several meetings on the agenda for,
You're probably looking at next year before repair.
We do have some other we do have other meetings set up for negotiations and whatnot, some other times that the board will be together.
Wednesday and Thursday.
I don't know. Thursday is when Ann from Stifel will be here.
My concern is we have some immediate issues here,
Right.
some immediate repair issues that are safety
Discussion
hazards,
doesn't say about-
safety issues. And I don't agree that we're not going to get anything for the money that's been sitting in that.
Well, when we're talking about repairs, I looked at those pictures from the Glenwood High School. And for $850,000, if I looked at those pictures, it's not like there are 100 pictures of disrepair in the parking lot.
Can you explain the
You have to
repair?
understand that on the west side of the building, we had planned on putting concrete on the west side originally during the construction this coming summer. That got pushed back to the way we're funding, and when this took place, what we found was that, the picture's really not real clear, but if you look at the bottom, there's about 2 inches of CA6 at the bottom, and what happened during the course of construction, that they drug mud and mixed it in with the rock, and when it gets wet, it will compress and it will move, and that's the problem with the asphalt. The asphalt is, in places, only 3 inches thick, rather than what's recommended for asphalt application. In some areas, it's 4 inches thick. It ranges between 3 and 4 inches, based on the information we got back from PSI. And we feel like that the combination of the thickness of the asphalt plus the fact that we've got mud mixed in with what should really be just rock is causing the asphalt to move and deteriorate much faster than what we ever anticipated.
Okay.
So what's
So
our...
is that
west side, we had already-
$850,000?
I'm sorry?
$850,000 to make that repair?
I'll let Mike talk to the
It's,
numbers.
That's what-
$850,000 includes, originally we were going to replace the L-shaped bus lane on the west side. It's about 30 foot wide and it's L-shaped, it heads out towards GES. But you've had failures also on the east side. And the buses run around, up to the front door there and down the driveway, and that's quite a bit more than actually even on the east side. Originally, our budget originally was about $400,000 to do the whole high school. But now we've got these extra drives to do, plus we're also seal coating and fixing cracks, in all of the parking lots, as well as seal coating the drive all the way around the building, restriping. So there's a lot of work. There.
And this is not only here, but it's also, this includes the bus lane, new bus lanes at GMS, is that correct?
GMS is another budget.
That's
Okay.
$1.3 million.
Yeah, that's a whole other budget.
So Mike, this 850 would include the entire perimeter drive around GHS?
Wherever you would typically run buses, and what we would do we would remove the asphalt and the gravel, and we would put in new concrete and gravel in those areas, a foot thick. 6 inches of concrete, 6 inches of gravel at both areas, and I don't have the exact quantities.
The areas that are like this?
The areas, that would resolve all those areas. There may be a few other areas out in the parking lots. What we've observed is there's a few areas where there's some significant cracks in the high school lot that need to be filled in with a filler of some type, and then they put a sealer over the top of it.
The pictures really don't do justice to the kind of damage that was created by the buses turning in this area. That's a 40 by 12 foot piece of asphalt that has just failed, and that's actually about 12 inches deep. So the potential for a bus to get stuck was pretty high.
You've had failures. You've had failures over the past several years. We've actually spent some health, life, safety money previously. It wasn't, a large amount. I can't remember the values, maybe $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 at the various schools, which is just normal maintenance kind of stuff that you do. Whenever you got buses running on asphalt, you're going to have, eventually, you're going to have problems. And it's just finally, caught up with us here. So it's only going to get worse. You need to And as Dave pointed out, the base underneath it, sometimes during construction, they'll lay down some gravel, and then as they use that gravel area as a platform, to lay their materials on and so on and so forth, and a lot of times that gets contaminated. There's other also, issues that can happen when you have heavy traffic like buses rolling on that. It'll do what you call pump. It'll start pumping on that subgrade, and it'll actually start working the dirt up to the surface. And then that's the reason why you had those failures there. Either it was already contaminated and it finally failed, or you notice that's on a curve. Buses on curves, that's the first area that
right. And our winter hasn't been very good.
Yeah, the winter has not been a good winter for any of this.
Back to the 2010 health, life, safety money. Did we spend some money at GHS on the parking out of that?
I can't remember if it was out of 2010 or 2011. We did some health, life, safety amendments, and in order to spend health, life, safety money on parking lots, they'll approve building-related items, health, life, safety-related items a lot easier than they will approve parking lots. Parking lots requires a board resolution. You have to have that, to get to step one, on the resolution, this hearing and resolution. So that's what we're doing now. So,
sure.
But we did spend. It wasn't significant.
No, but I think it was like $250,000 at the high school.
Yeah, it's actually 276, 240.
As part of that. So are we redoing some of that, or is this an addition?
Well, no, there's a lot of patches out there now. If you look through that parking lot.
April 26, 2010. We have, there was a resolution about hard surface landscapes, and...
Okay, but I think what'll help here is we've all been in the mindset here that we need some sort of a follow-up with stuff like this, and I think we've been asked before for what we spent that $9.5 million on for that 2010 bond money. This would have been a good way to know what it was spent on, and if there was $1 million left, then we could have known about it. I think that's where the shock come in, is we thought we spent it, and now we're finding out there's still $1 million left. I'm glad if you saved $1 million, but if we didn't have a 9.5 spent to begin with, we only had 8.5, and it was just sitting there, then that report would have shown us that. Carrie, did you know that $1 million was just sitting there?
No, Dave had asked for, they're talking about that report that we had talked about that you gave, and you said you gave during your facilities meeting, the report out on the projects.
That's my database for watching projects and accounting for projects. There is I can present that again. I'd have to update it. I've gone from using that report to using Skyward, and that's what I've been using. And it kind of got about the tail end of this project, I started moving over to Skyward. So I can pull Skyward information and bring that forward, and that will have all the current information in it.
Isn't the bottom line here that this needs to be repaired? And if we don't repair it using the health, life, safety funds that we have, we're going to have to use some other fund to repay it.
It's scheduled for repair in the $35 million bond money. The issue is that this year's construction money has been reduced to $6.9 million, and that money won't carry everything else we're trying to accomplish plus this.
Okay.
So if we want to get it done this year to ensure we don't have these kind of safety issues, then this is the alternative. We've got $1 million sitting out there, I'm told, and that I should find a way that makes sense to utilize it to accomplish this task. Now, what that means to the $35 million is that we'll have money left over.
Right, we'll have another $1 million
Yes.
that we didn't spend, yeah.
So are we just through the back door now telling everybody that, in fact, we will have spent, I mean, $36 million? That's all. My question is that, okay.
No, that's not it. I mean, we're
Okay.
spending the
One
35 million.
question I
This
have
is already in, this is in a fund out there.
Please.
This is in a fund, and I mean,
Okay.
you want to go back how many years and say how many millions of dollars you spent on funds like that?
My question is, are we paying $850,000 to redo all of the bus lane? Or are we paying, what are we getting for
Mike just explained.
$850,000? That's what I would like to know. Why do we
Mike
have
just
to do the
explained.
whole thing if there are certain areas that are needing attention, but a great percentage is not needing attention?
You're getting on the east side of the building and the west side of the building, the lanes where the buses drive.
Those traffic lanes that are on the curbs,
It's on
basically.
the curve. On the
Curves.
east side, there would be a U-shaped section that goes up and around the building all the way out to Plummer. On the east side, or the west side, there would be an L-shaped piece that comes in off of Plummer, and goes down and turns and heads towards GES. And it stops there. As soon as you get to that drive over at GES, that turns into concrete, so the
Right.
buses will be fine there. So that's part of it. That's part of the cost. The rest of the cost is what's always been programmed for seal coat and crack repair. On the rest of the, I'm just talking about the concrete goes just in the bus lanes. It's 30 foot wide or so. It's not the giant parking lot that, you park 1,000 cars out there, as well as the road that goes around the north side of the building. That's ready for seal coating, crack repair as well.
So you're going to take out the L-shaped on the west side, the U-shaped on the east side, and put concrete
Put
in.
concrete in it. That's correct. And there still will be asphalt, because the majority of the parking lot's all asphalt now, and it would stay. Only it's going to be sealed and cracks repaired and restriped.
And the concrete is stronger, will weather the bus.
Well, will hold up under bus traffic much better than asphalt. You can make asphalt do it if you get thick enough and you got a right base underneath it, but the more foolproof way to do it is with concrete.
And aren't there some big chunks out in the student parking lot too on the east side? I mean, there's some big holes just in the parking
They
lot too.
repaired, that photo right there is some of the repairs that you guys did, I think, over.
We put rock back in place of it.
Didn't we
Yeah.
talk about
It was
putting,
just a temporary.
didn't we talk about putting concrete, or that was part of what we wanted to do when we built GES into some of those areas, and we didn't have the money to do it at that time? I seem to remember that we were
That
talking
GES?
about that. No, GES. When we put the concrete as far as we did, we wanted to go further because we had some failures right there too.
Right.
And we didn't do it at the time because of.
So these are your
budget.
estimates of them two projects.
Yeah, one GES or GHS total estimate is $857,000.
And that's a little bit lower than what you presented at the construction meeting, is that right?
Well,
thought
it's
we were-
actually higher because, we just recently found out about the east drive needing to be repaired. That elevated, the budget from $400,000 up to $857 or whatever it
Okay, and
is.
GMS is higher too, because I
Yeah,
think we read about
GMS is
that.
higher too. That's based basically on scope, through our meetings with the administration and where we need new concrete walks and what all we're doing, so we just added it all up.
Can I just summarize for me, is that we have asphalt that is dangerous and or unsuitable for our buses, needs to be repaired. The repair is going to be with concrete, which is stronger, should last longer. The asphalt, and that is being proposed to be paid for out of this $1 million life safety. The asphalt part of the parking lot is going to be sealed, repaired, and striped, and that is coming out of the 35, no.
No, it's coming out of the same
All the
million.
same,
Out of the
same money,
same.
whichever direction you go, yeah, the same.
And this
Bid
is-
at the same time.
Bid at the same, okay. And it's work that has to be done, if not now, in the future.
Right.
and now we have funds for it.
Well, and as I think Dave said, if we don't do it this summer, we have to wait till the following summer to do it, because, and then you're going to spend money for temporary repairs out there they're just going to get dug up, and
Could we just repair the bad spots in these photos?
That's kind of what they've done. You just put gravel in them for now.
I mean, clear them out and do a section of asphalt.
Yeah, you could, and if you walked out there, you would see quite a few more. There's a lot of other areas that have been patched, actually have been patched over recent years, because this is not something that has just now started. It's been going on for a little while.
this is a long-term fix. This is something that, once we do it, it's done for longer than 12 years that the high school's been there now, so.
It sounds like we need a decision before we can move on, whatever that decision may be.
Yes.
I'd like to call for a vote.
Hold on a second. One second.
Yeah.
I understand that, Susan, and I was just going to say that. We're in a public hearing. If the board has no other questions, we can go to talk to the audience, so. No other questions? Yes, sir.
You need me to come up here?
No. Rod, do you want to up here?
Here's my question. I just need a clarification because I'm trying to wrap my mind around this. Okay, it sounds to me like you're saying that we're replacing something that we should have done the other way to begin with. Okay? So should we have put concrete in the first place?
Concrete's
True.
very expensive.
Should have been concrete in the first place. We've got $1 million to bank, and you're telling me it's $800,000 to replace it. Should have been done that way in the first place.
There's two ways to do it. It's done, just look at your asphalt roads, in town.
But I'm asking a simple question.
But you're looking at what was decided 12 years ago.
Okay.
Or 14 years ago when they designed the school, when they designed the parking lot.
But did we not know this at that time?
Know what?
That it would have been better to use concrete instead of asphalt.
Well, there's a delta there too between using concrete and asphalt. And that high school was
Did we have
over
the funds
26.
to do it? We had $30-some-odd million.
No,
I'm just trying to understand why.
We had $26.5 million.
Well, I'm just trying to understand why we went the cheaper route, and now we're going back and doing it over again. So in essence, we're doubling the cost.
We still had, well, no, because we've had 12 years of it in asphalt.
But if you would have put that concrete in, would it have lasted?
Who knows? I don't know.
And then I guess
Do you know, Greg?
Well, I guess my second question is, you're talking about the ground giving underneath, and it sounds to me like they did a shoddy job. Is that the truth or not? Does the contractor have liability for putting down bad asphalt?
Say after 12 years.
After 12 years, you can't. And also, as they said,
Probably done to bid.
it was done to bid. It was done to spec at the time.
So we kind of cut corners, is what you're saying?
No, I'm not saying that at all. No, it was done to spec at the time, and it's failed over the years. It's just like anything fails. You go out and look at a road that's out here on Route 4. They have life cycle times, and I assume that's what we're looking at here. There's a life cycle to that particular concrete or that particular blacktop. And this has been a tough winter. The last couple of winters have been tough winters on them, and it's just wear and tear on it.
And the Board of Education at that time made that decision based on the information they had. For us to sit and second guess what they decided to spend their money on, we can't do that.
Well, I just want to make
The board
sure-
at that time decided.
I just want to make sure when you make this decision, that we make an informed decision, so we're not doing it again. That's what my question
Well, we
is.
will be doing it again because the school's going to be there for 75 years, and you know that we're going to replace it, although concrete
But
just
I want
lasts
to make
longer.
sure we're
but
doing it the
costs-
right way and not taking the cheap way.
This is not the cheap way. I mean, this is,
I understand the new way isn't.
yeah.
But at the time when the school costs so much money, you have to make a decision. It's just like if you were to build a brand-new home, would you use an asphalt driveway or a concrete driveway? But you know what, if you lived in the Chicago suburbs, you wouldn't, because it's just too expensive.
Yeah. Well, let's just say that that's the way it was spec'd out at that time. We've gotten 12 years of use out of it, and now it's time to make changes, and it's time to dig it up and put it in there. There's a lot more bus traffic out there than there was 12 years ago also, and there's a lot more cars in that parking lot than there originally was 12 years ago.
So you wouldn't go back and put asphalt in though?
I don't want to second guess any decisions that were made at that time. I don't think anybody should.
You know, because we got to be concerned. I mean, we've got teacher salary negotiations coming up. We've got $1 million. I mean, we got to figure out.
But this $1 million is for health, life, safety.
But
It's not in the education fund.
You know, look at everything.
But they're in separate piles. They're in separate funds, and these funds can only be used for this type of thing. You can't use them for anything
I
else.
just want to make sure we're being cautious with our funds.
I think we are.
I just,
Thank you. Anything else?
Is this the right fix now? Is this the best long-term option, the best value we can choose for the long term?
I have to agree with that, and the reason I will agree with it, the price of asphalt's going way up and concrete's come down. To get the right combination of asphalt on here, you're talking about probably for bus traffic, you're probably at least 6 inches. And we're using concrete in lieu of asphalt because there's savings to be garnered there.
Any other comments from anyone?
And both of these were on the phase 2, is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
The GMS and the high school.
Now, why, this is a timing question relative to the $35 million bond issuance, so do you want me to ask it now or later?
Go ahead.
Okay, I have a question, and that is, the need has been explained, but the source of monies, I'm not convinced that, I'm not yet convinced that we cannot postpone this to have it paid by the $35 million bond monies and see if we can get some sort of net benefit from these health, life, safety monies.
I think
it's the source of funding that I'm just not, I think we haven't looked at all the, I don't think we've looked at all the options.
Can I weigh in on that a little?
Sure.
And I need a little help, Tina. What we're looking at is that we're going to have the building, pretty much GMS, under construction. Pretty much the entire building is going to be under some form of construction at this time. We're going to shut down the water. There's a lot of interior work going to be taking place. So there's nobody going to be in the building. At this time, rather than extend that into the next year, we thought it'd be wise to just keep it to 1 year and have the building just shut down for 1 year so we can move summer school back to the middle school. So what we would do the asphalt construction and the interior construction at GMS at the same time, rather than waiting and doing it twice, shutting the building down twice, this year and next year. We just wanted to do it just once. You follow that?
Well, I'm not, it's the timing of the high school asphalting. I mean, there's not going, the summer school's not going to occur at the high school, is it? This summer, is it?
Yes, it
But
is.
we'll do this in phases. We'll do the east side or the west side first and then move to the other side.
Susan, I'm really trying to wrap my mind around what you're saying, because you have the financial expertise that I don't have. But when you're saying what options, that we should wait until we see what options we can do to spend this money. Give me an idea of what you mean when you say an option.
Well, actually, what I'm thinking is we get information from Stifel that says, do you remember the schedule that they put together, and they refunded some of the Build America bonds?
They refinanced them, they didn't refund
Well,
them.
refinanced them. So, and remember she said, well, we can't do any more. And when she made that statement, she assumed that the $1 million it had been spent and we were receiving a benefit from it. So it's like receiving $1 million. Then the question at hand is, what's the most economically beneficial way that the district can take this $1 million, refinance it, and postpone the asphalting with the $35 million bond? money, or go ahead and spend it right now. So some of it depends on the urgency of the asphalting, and some of it just depends on money.
But
Dave,
but
can
we'll
we-
still have the money, right? What you're saying, we're still going to have the money
Well, in order
that will be, this has to be spent, sounds very negative, will be spent for the betterment of our school.
Well, when you refinance, Linda, you have to trade in some old money to get new money. And that's what refinancing is. So this is, just view this as old money that we would perhaps be able to trade in for a lower rate.
But this
Of
is
interest
Build
expense.
America bonds? Well, the Build America bonds, isn't there, you can't, they were very strict on what you're allowed to do with those.
Right.
You couldn't just,
Right,
you
and she
can't
explained that last
refinance
time.
them.
Yes.
The one thing that we can do so that you feel more comfortable is that perhaps we can wait until Thursday night. We have a board meeting on Thursday night for self-evaluation. We could talk to Stiefel on Thursday morning and then bring this up, add this to the agenda for Thursday night in the do an open session first,
Well,
if that's more comfortable.
I don't see that it's going to buy us anything, other than
I would like, when is it appropriate to call for the vote?
just one, is there anybody else in the audience that wants to ask a question that hasn't done so yet?
Dave, have we decided on
isn't.
which pattern around GMS we're going to use? Because I think we were looking at 2. Did we narrow that down to 1?
We've narrowed it down to 1, but we're fine tuning that as we speak.
And will the bids reflect
We're
one or
gonna
the
talk
other, so
about
we can
that.
choose, or how?
Yeah,
We're adding a lot of
the two options we were looking at was whether we picked up students in the front of the school
Right.
or picked them up in the back like they do now. And that's what what was decided where we would do that. But it requires some more improvements. It requires extending the bus loop turnaround back there.
Will that decision then be based on how the bids come in?
I don't have to.
Or
Well, we're
not?
not going to do it both ways. We're
But
not-
I mean, whether we went one way or the other.
No, we got to commit one way or the other, so we don't draw it twice. you know. And from all the discussions we've had so far, everybody's pretty well, there's pros and cons both ways, but everybody's pretty well resolved in their minds that they think that picking up students at the north side of the school is still the appropriate place for exiting out of that building.
You like that, Mr. Ray?
Yes, actually, we had a committee that met, and everything was explained, and we chose to go with this pickup in the back because in case of inclement weather, we can place the students in the cafeteria, they can leave from that area. Also, we took into consideration the number of cars that are coming in. We don't want the cars to be in the same traffic as the buses. So it was a safety issue that we determined to go with the back of the bus pickup.
In addition to that, you get an opportunity for expansion as, your
Down the road.
population
It's far
grows.
greater in the back of the school than it is in the front. Right?
Thursday night then?
I don't know.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Linda called for a vote, but
Well, the vote would be on the next item, is my understanding, but then, this was a public hearing. We'll close the public hearing now. We'll go on to 5.2, which is where we, unless it's farther than look here, Linda. This is it, 5.2, right? Go to 5.2 on here, and this is the use of,
Safe fire protection facilities.
Yeah,
Health
it-
and safety, same thing.
it's health, life safety, yeah, same thing.
We're
So this is
requesting authorization.
this is where we're asking for authorization. It's a request to use. This has to be filed, or it has been filed already.
It's yet to be filed.
It's yet to be filed, but you need board approval in order to
approval
file.
tonight.
Okay. So, you've seen the photos in here. Legal notice has been posted in the paper for this meeting. So this is up for action. Linda, do you have a?
Yes, I would like to move that we accept this, authorize this resolution to repair the asphalt as proposed. Using life safety funds.
I would like to. It'd be replacing concrete, or asphalt with
Repairing the asphalt
concrete.
default with concrete.
Yeah.
We're just giving
As
the
proposed.
approval to use that money for these 2 projects.
Yes, yeah.
And then the bids will come later.
Yes.
Well, the next step is we got to get approval through ISB. That's 2 to
And that's-
3 week turnaround.
And that's what this is, right?
Correct.
This will allow us to go to ISB, and they will review it, and they will either approve it or not approve it.
That's correct.
But we can't do that step until this is done.
That is correct.
And then we're not bound by completing it should the bids come in that they are not acceptable to us. Am I correct?
That's correct.
That is my motion.
Okay, I need a second, please.
Second.
Thank you, Brandon. Discussion? Betsy, call roll, please.
Maddox?
Yes.
Petermeyer?
Yes.
Weitzel?
Yes.
Worley? No. Carter?
Yes.
Cup?
Yes.
Nucis?
Yes. Passes, so we'll have this coming back to us in hopefully fairly soon with some bids. So thank you, everyone, for comments and discussion. Next item, under 6.1, is opportunity for visitors to address the school board concerning any agenda topic. Is there anybody who wishes to address the board tonight on any topic that is on the agenda? Not, we'll continue. Next item is consent agenda items, 7.1 through 7.14. Is there anyone who wishes to pull out any of these items for individual consideration?
I would like to pull out 713.
So we're all one.
7.13, okay, 7.13, and
And
that's
I'd like to pull out 7.7.
7.7, okay. Anything else? I need a motion then to approve our consent agenda items as presented in your board packet tonight, 7.1 through 7.14, minus 7.11, I'm sorry, 7.13 and 7.7. Need a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Thank you. And a second.
I'll second.
Thank you. And call the roll, please.
Petermeyer?
Yes.
Weitzel?
Yes.
Worley?
Yes.
Carter?
Yes.
Cup?
Yes.
Maddox?
Yes.
Nucis?
Yes. We go 7.7 first. Susan, you had something you wanted to consider on
Yes,
that?
on the construction minutes that were posted on board docs, when I checked it about, 3:30 or something, the attachments weren't included, were not included. But one of those attachments involves recommending action regarding a legal matter. Can you put attachment B up on the screen so we can see what was going on there?
Attachment B is not in the board docs,
Yeah, I only have the...
because it's currently a draft.
Okay.
Makes reference to 3.
This is just minutes, too.
Correct, but, it's hard to accept the committee minutes when we really don't have an idea of what this might be.
Well, we wouldn't have been in the meeting anyway. It would be up to
Right.
Steve
I have
to
a copy of the
comment.
draft. You want to pass them around?
Yeah, it's in draft form right now, so we hadn't released it.
Well, either delete the sentence or pass it around. I mean, this is where we have to follow up on the details when we're talking about legal issues.
You're not taking any action on the legal issues, you're just
Well, what's
approving their
legal?
minutes
Just
that...
explain to us verbally then.
Carrie, what were you saying?
Well, the minutes just reflect the conversation that was held within that group. And so Steve and Jim and I and Dave can talk about the conversation that was had. That attachment is something that's currently in draft that we're working on, so we have to get legal input on that. And so,
Okay.
so you're not approving the letter, you're not
Okay.
approving any action legally, you're simply saying that we understand that this is what has been said based on the people that were in attendance.
Okay, but the minutes say Ball Chatham is recommending action from legal at this time. What does that sentence mean?
That's what the construction committee is getting some advice from legal on this matter. And if we should enter into any sort of imminent or pending imminent litigation, we would do that behind closed doors.
Okay. Well then,
In closed session.
on this forecast of small projects, there's like 8 of them. Are you in discussion stage only on this, Dave, or what's, it just says,
Can you bring that
it
up?
says projects are not forecasted. And then
It's up
it lists
higher there, Betsy.
8 projects.
Right there.
And then you say,
We're just in discussion, and these health life safety repairs, whether we can roll those in under the, one thing about maintenance is it just never ends. You know, the original concept behind the $35 million bonds that was all drawn up in 2008. And between then and now, it's now 2014, things take place. Window covering needs to be taken care of at GMS. We've got health life safety repairs to things like new saws that have been added to the tech shop. They need to have evacuation systems put on. Tech shop doors have failed at GMS. These are things that we're looking at to try and see if we've got enough budget to roll them underneath the $35 million. Now, they're just topics of discussion at this point. They're not rolled into the projects, but things like athletic bleacher seating, we know we've got some deficiencies, and pretty healthy numbers to those deficiencies.
okay. Well, then, I couldn't tell, could you just add something like under consideration for further decision?
Sure.
Because as it stands right now, you don't know if you already have decided to go
He
ahead?
can't
We
until,
can't.
he'd have to come here and have your
Okay.
approval.
Yeah.
So it's just a committee that they're just
Okay,
looking at all the options.
This is information only.
You're just approving the
Right.
minutes. You're not
Correct.
approving any action or saying that you agree with this. All you're doing is approving the minutes based on what the committee members, if they share that that's what was talked about. But then anything that would need to come for action would come before the whole
Correct.
board.
Okay.
At the committee's recommendation or not, they would weigh in then. So this is just an approval of minutes.
Okay, well, good. I just want to make sure that,
Sure.
just want to make sure that if the board has to look any, consider anything, I sure like to have some numbers associated with each project.
You bet.
Right.
And, okay, I'll let you guys arm wrestle about who wants to talk about 7.13, so.
Well, I was really impressed that we had students who raised money and are donating it to the school. It becomes an awesome responsibility then to spend it wisely, and we will do our best to do that.
And I just want to say, my short tenure on the board and all the fun I've been having in closed session and long meetings, it's nice when you're reading these things to see some bright notes.
It is.
Thanks to those students, and it means a lot, and we'll do our best.
You know what, maybe we can bring them here for us to thank them. That'd be a nice idea.
Better yet, I'd stop by and have a cookie.
Yeah. And I'd like to be able to maybe give them a certificate, have them come in at the next meeting. Do you mind asking them?
Maybe a tray.
And then give them and some cookies, because they're delicious.
Wait a minute, are you saying if we go there, we get cookies?
Yes. You have to buy them.
When's good to stop in? 'Cause
You
I'm
know the
off
right
on
people.
Friday.
Friday morning around 10
Friday morning.
It's a cookie day. We'll go buy them.
at the fight meeting tomorrow.
Okay, well, thank you.
But you're right, it is very, very gracious that they did that.
So we need to approve these two, so we need a motion to approve the construction committee meeting minutes of March 5th, 2014 as presented in your board packet tonight.
So moved.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Thank you. Call the roll, please.
Carter.
Yes.
Cup.
Yes.
Maddox.
Yes.
Petermeyer.
Yes.
Weitzel.
Yes.
Worley.
Yes.
Nucis.
Yes. And I need a motion then to accept the donation as presented in 7.13 tonight.
So moved.
Thank you. And a second, please.
Second.
Thank you, Lisa. Call the roll, please.
Weitzel.
Yes.
Worley. Yes. Carter. Yes. Cup.
Yes.
Maddox.
Definitely.
Petermeyer.
Yes.
Nucis.
Yes, thank you, everyone. On to personnel consent agenda items 8.1 through 8.9. Is there anybody who wishes to pull one out for individual consideration? Any motion then to
Could I pull 8.2?
you can if you want. Yeah, 8.2, okay. Then we've got, okay, need a motion then to approve 8.1 through 8.9 minus 8.2. Need a motion to that effect?
Move.
Thank you. Thank you. Call the roll, please.
Worley. Yes. Carter.
Yes.
Cup.
Yes.
Maddox.
Yes.
Petermeyer.
Yes.
Weitzel.
Yes.
Nucis.
Yes. Lisa, 8.2?
I don't want to embarrass anybody, but I recognize that sometimes we make decisions in life and then we realize we want to go a different direction and do something that truly satisfies our soul. And I actually just made a similar, and I really appreciate the fact that sometimes you have to make those decisions and do something that means a great deal to you and to your family. But I'd like to thank Mr. Murphy for his service and all that he's taught me in the last couple of years.
Okay, thank you. We need then to 8.2, accept the resignation of CSBO. Thank you. And a second, please.
Second.
Thank you. And call the roll, please. That was Brandon. Call the roll.
Carter.
Yes.
Kopp.
Yes.
Maddox.
Yes.
Petermeyer.
Yes.
Weitzel.
Yes.
Worley. Yes.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Okay, on to old business. 9.1, Amoresco contract. And we have our legal counsel here tonight, Mr. Rick Grensbach, and Ms. Laura Lee Burkett with us to answer any questions from that the board members may have tonight. So if you want to, I don't know if you want to come on up here so we can just at the podium there, Rick. Yeah, so we can, you're on the mic then.
Mr. President, I don't.
Yes, sir.
I believe that when I talked to Superintendent Ruby, she indicated that the board members had questions about the review of the Amoresco contract in 2010. And I'm the person in our office who did conduct that review and can give you a chronology of that. We can start there and you can ask any.
You want to start with the chronology?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
You may recall from your discussion at last month's meeting that the board took action in connection with the Amoresco contract, I think on March 22nd of 2010. I received the contract on March 17th from the superintendent. And the superintendent asked me on March 17 if I could find time to review the verbiage of this contract with Amoresco prior to Monday night. The terms have been negotiated to satisfaction, but the language review opinion would be appreciated. Evidently, he had gotten the contract on the 16th from Amoresco. So I had a chance, I was busy that week, but had a chance to look over the contract, the portions that he asked about, and get back to them on March 22nd, which was a Sunday. And I did have some concerns about the legal aspects of the contract. I'd seen Amoresco contracts before, and I'd done performance contract reviews for other school districts. My concern raised with this vendor, and actually many vendors over the years, was I had concerns about the insurance provisions of the contract. I had concerns about the indemnification provisions of the contract, limitations on liability if the vendor did something wrong during the course of construction, which resulted or could have resulted in injuries to students, staff, or visitors at the college. I had concerns about the lack of jurisdiction and venue in Sangamon County in case a dispute arose with this vendor. These are things that I frequently look at in contracts of this nature. It was my understanding, based on the proposed resolution that was presented to me, that the district had already gone through the RFP process earlier in the year, which we were not a part of, and the staff had reviewed whatever proposals had come in response to the RFP and made a decision, or I guess had come to a consensus to recommend to the Board of Education at that time that the board accept the Amoresco contract proposal. So in any event, I responded, as I said, on March 21. I did speak to the superintendent on March 22 and reiterated the concerns I had with the contract. The resolution that was presented to the board authorized the administrative staff to enter into a contract with Amoresco, but only after legal review had been completed, and I wasn't satisfied with the terms of the agreement. I didn't hear anything further in this regard, and I wasn't at the board meeting until May 25th. So a couple of months went by, and I received revisions in response to the issues I've raised. And on June 2nd, I had an opportunity then to review those revisions. On June 2nd, I again responded to the district, to the superintendent, that I was not satisfied with the revised language, and made some further proposals for refinement of that language. On June 3rd, I did receive some changes, some further changes to the contract, and I indicated to the superintendent that I was satisfied now that all of the concerns I had raised had been met. And my understanding was then that the contract was signed. And until this latest, until I got Mr. Murphy's report that was presented to the board last week, I really didn't have any involvement after that day.
Okay.
So that's...
questions, board members?
Rick, can I address your email?
Sure.
That was sent to...
Which date do you have?
March 21st. It's the Sunday?
Yes.
And that email was referenced in the March 22nd meeting video. The superintendent read your first two sentences. What he did not read was the last part of your email where it says, please have your operations people pay particular note to section 10G, wherein the district needs to give Amoresco at least 30 days advance notice of any changes that can affect energy usage and thus impact the guarantee. Here's where I'm having some trouble trying to figure this out. I thought meeting minutes were supposed to tell a story, but I'm finding out it's I don't mean to be funny here, but it's like a riddle. I'm finding out now that it's being called a stipulated contract, and there is no guarantee.
Well,
were you aware that there was supposed to be a guarantee?
There is guarantee language in the contract.
Because it's a performance contract.
Yeah,
so there has to be some performance.
Yeah, one of the things I had to do when I looked at this, and I would do in the event of any contract that's presented to a school district under the energy conservation article of the school code, is make sure that the contract itself comported with the statutory requirement. This one did. And that means it has to be a qualified provider. There has to be a provision for installment payments. It can't extend beyond a 20-year payout, that sort of thing. All of those statutory requirements were met. The stipulated attachment, that was never presented to me.
You never saw it?
No, I never saw it. And didn't know about it until last month. But in any event, the guarantee language was in the contract, is in the contract, and it has to be in the contract or it does not meet the statutory standard.
Which was part one of the resolution. It has to follow the school code.
Yeah, right. Now, I've seen other contracts where at least part of the savings are stipulated because it's so difficult to monitor this stuff. The reason, of course, especially in a district like this that's so dynamic, the growth has been so fantastic that the buildings don't stay the same from year to year. The usage is not the same. The number of students in the building is not the same. The number of employees, the hours it's open, they change so constantly that I frankly don't know how it could be monitored.
But that should have been talked about when the decision was made.
Yeah, and
go through with this.
Yeah, I have not looked at the minutes. I wasn't at the meeting. That wasn't part of my review.
But you did read the resolution or review the resolution?
Yeah.
Okay. And the dates on it are completely off?
In what respect?
Well, they talked about that the requests for proposals were advertised on April 23rd of '09. And they were actually done in January of '10. and that they were received as requested on May 12th of '09, where they were actually in the 10. So,
No, I had been aware that the RFP had gone out earlier in 2010. We were not a part, as you know, we were not a part of the RFP process. We're never asked to review the RFP. And it was my understanding that the RFP responses had come in earlier that year, and the district staff had spent time, I presume, going through it and making their analysis of who to recommend.
Do you usually review RFPs? Is that
No, I would say not usually. There have been occasions if something's out of the ordinary, like an insurance bid or a finance package bid, where a district hasn't been through it before. But I wouldn't say in this case that would have been out of the ordinary.
It wouldn't have been out of the ordinary?
Not to review it. Not to review it.
okay, so you were under, had no idea that there was any kind of stipulation of savings?
No, except that I know a lot of these contracts, especially if it's an illumination.
Right, and some do.
A lot of it's stipulated because it's the products are, I don't know, 75% cheaper to operate.
Right,
and if you presume everything stays the same, then there should be 75% savings.
Because the proposal we got from Amoresco was about 358 pages.
Yeah.
I didn't go through and print them all, but what I did print was there was some summaries of some other performance contracts that were done with some other school districts. And in there it states that the method of savings and guaranteed annual savings, and there was actually a place to choose which form of measure and verify they wanted to use, whether it was A, B, C, or D. I watched the March 22nd video, and I don't recall that was ever given as a choice for this board. But yet, now it's just assumed that it's stipulated, and we took all the risks now. Is there anything we can do to get some money back?
Well, I'll leave that to I'll leave that to Ms. Burkett to respond. But again, you understand, we weren't at that board meeting.
I understand.
To this day, I don't know whether or not you, as a district, have realized the savings that would offset the cost, or will realize it over the 20-year time frame. And I don't know how you measure that, other than to go with the stipulated numbers, and I don't know if those are reliable or not. But those, again, that was something that was handled at the district level, and we were specifically requested to only review the legal terms of the base contract, and that's what we did. So I'll turn it over to Laura Lee.
And just, if I could, I want to bring up something. The night the resolution was passed, bond counsel, what do they do? What would they have done in this process?
I don't know. Was there bond counsel involved in this?
Yeah, I believe.
Well, the bond counsel, and sometimes we serve as bond counsel for the district and issue legal opinions. But for example, let me think of one. Just recently, for the district's line of credit, which is a routine kind of thing that many districts do. But in order for a bank to issue funds on a line of credit, or make the line of credit available, whether you use it or not, they need an opinion from me that this is a tax-exempt obligation of the district or not. In this particular year, it is not a tax-exempt obligation. When the district did it a couple years ago, it was a tax. So that's what I would do when I have to issue an opinion for the issuer, for the school district. This was not a project where we served as bond counsel and I was asked to.
Correct, but you just led me right into what I wanted to kind of get to the point of. Part of this public content of March 22nd meeting on the agenda, it says, following this action, Dr. McArdle will work with bond counsel from Hutchison, Shockey, and Early and Company, and Chapman and Cutler. I have a piece of information from Chapman and Cutler, and it specifically goes into borrowing alternatives for Illinois school districts. And the first thing it says is that the purpose of this memorandum is to summarize the borrowing alternatives available to Illinois school districts. Under current law, such borrowings are governed by the provisions of the following laws. The very first thing is the Illinois School Code, which we discussed, and then it goes on to say compliance with this school code, the Debt Reform Act, the Extension Limitation Law, and the Bond Issuance Notification Act is necessary for the borrowing to be valid and legally binding, and compliance with the tax code and the federal regulations is necessary for the interest on the borrowing to be exempt from federal tax, federal income taxation. Okay, and then they've got a section in here that talks about guaranteed energy savings contracts. They're authorized to implement energy conservation measures. Such contracts between a district and a qualified provider of the energy conservation measures must include a written guarantee from the qualified provider that either the energy or operational cost savings resulting from the project will meet or exceed within 20 years the cost of the energy conservation measures. The qualified provider is required to reimburse the school district for any shortfall of guaranteed energy savings projected in the contract. School districts may also enter into an installment payment contract or lease purchase agreement for the purchase and installation of the energy conservation measures. And it goes on to say that the school district is required to include in its annual budget any amounts payable under the guaranteed energy savings contract and related certificates. We don't have a guarantee. We took all the risk, didn't we?
Well, you have a guarantee, but evidently, as it turned out, what the guarantee was, you would save the money that you agreed the district would save from the installation of these various upgrades.
Right.
And perhaps you have. But what Chapman and Cutler, I think, is who you're referring to. They're just repeating what I've referenced in the statute.
Right. That there is some rules here.
Qualified provider. The whole idea behind this performance contract, these energy savings contracts, was that school districts could finance improvements and energy conservation measures that most, maybe not this district as much as like a 186 that had some 80-year-old buildings when this statute was implemented. They could do it out of the savings. They could pay for it out of the savings as they went.
Correct.
That was the whole idea behind it.
Right.
And I realize you have concerns that that wasn't what happened here.
Right,
but that was the statutory intention. And that you could enter into a process where you don't use the traditional lowest responsible bidder. It could be a negotiated contract.
Correct. Because as long as it was a neutral budget-based model, then it didn't matter who you went out to.
Right.
As long as they followed the school code and measured and verified and made up the shortfall. Because I wasn't at that March 22nd meeting either.
Yeah.
But a representative from Amoresco was asked the question, what happens if we don't meet our energy production or our energy savings projections? And he said, we will write you a check for the shortfall.
Well, you know, Steve, what my impression was when I read that contract.
I understand.
Because you saw what I put in my
I
memorandum.
understand. And so I guess my question to Lauren Lee, what can we do to get some money?
Well, that's the hard part. Can this be closed? Do you mind?
You can just, yeah, go ahead.
I just don't want to hit buttons I'm not supposed to be hitting. Okay, I had a few questions that I tried to address by reviewing what we had in front of us and some of the things I was able to get afterwards. The questions that I tried to review were this. Was legal review completed before the signing of the contract? Okay, as you can see, or you heard Rick say that he gave the final okay around June 3rd or 4th, something like that. The contract itself is dated May 28th. However, the contract does include the language that Rick finally agreed to on June 4th. So I don't know why it says effective May 28th. It could be that that was the last business day of May, and that's why that date was used. But the language that was at the end of the legal review is in the contract. So legal review was complete when the contract was signed. That was the first part. As to the other parts of the resolution, we don't have those answers. Now, I don't know those answers because I was not, neither of us were involved in the process. The next thing I looked at was the contract signed by Mr. Gillum, the same contract that was sent to Rick for review, except for the changes that, he just talked to you about. There were some variations between these contracts. The one Rick had for review referenced attachments A through F, whereas the one signed by Mr. Gillum referenced an attachment G. However, the attachment G was referenced in attachment C, so I don't know at what point G might have been added. There was some language deleted from the asbestos and lead paint area. However, I have to say that those are not material terms. There was not an asbestos or lead paint problem as far as I know, so that would not give you a basis for rescission or anything. The warranty section 9, there was some language that was deleted with regard to Amoresco's subcontractors. I don't know if that's because they didn't, I believe there were subs. I don't know why that language was deleted from the contract Rick had to review, but again, I have not heard of any issues with subcontractors, so that doesn't give you anything. The other two changes were the changes, or 3 or 4 changes, I should say, were the changes that Rick required. So those are the differences in the two contracts. There was a valid resolution in terms of, okay, we're directing our superintendent to enter into this contract as long as these items occur. I understand that ISB did, that the approvals were obtained and there were sufficient funding available and legal review was completed. I understand that it was not clear to people necessarily that there were stipulated savings, and it would not be clear if you read the contract without the attachments. It's in fact impossible to know because that's where all the negotiated terms really are. So the part that Rick pointed out to them about the verification was based on the language in the contract, which is then amended by the attachments A through G. Now, attachment G, which was not included in the original contract that Rick reviewed, really is kind of a non-entity. Essentially it says, you'll save this. Energy savings will equal what you're using now minus what you use later after we do all this installation. Well, that's pretty simple. Pretty much all of us can figure that out. If what I'm using now, my savings is the difference between what I used before and what I'm using now. So that really, G was not a material term, and that's what I'm getting to. It's very clear in the attachments that savings are stipulated based on the calculations. There is to be no verification or measurement. That's in attachment D, and it is for the annual energy savings. The stipulated savings are $105,556 annually. For repair and maintenance, it's $50,000, and for long-term operating costs, it's $15,000 annually. Those were all stipulated. If you look at the end of attachment D, you will see again that these savings shall not be measured or audited. So those attachments, in essence, the easiest way to explain it is that they amended the main part of the contract, because the main part of the contract is subject to the attachments. Well, let me finish one more change. There was one more change and then I'll field your questions. The scope of services in attachment B is the same. Well, I can't say it's the same as what Rick reviewed because he didn't see any attachments. But the scope of services in attachment B is not what you got. And this is the odd part of it. I think Dave Murphy mentioned last time there was a GHS transformer that was not installed. Based on an email I saw, I thought, oh, aha, here's something. The transformer costs $93,000 and we don't have a transformer, so there's restitution to be had with, with interest and everything. But as it turns out, after further conferences with Dave Murphy, that while that GHS transformer was not put in place, other items were. One of the examples I have received was lighting at some kind of traffic signal by the, I think it's the middle school. That would cost about $50,000 in and of itself. So that's not in the scope of services in the contract, but you got that. So in that instance, you got more than what was in the contract. With regard to the transformer, you got less. Does it equal out? Mr. Murphy says that it does, and in fact, it actually goes to the district's benefit, where it sounds as though you actually received more than the $2,207,000, however many odd dollars was actually spent. So those were different items in a different scope of services that was made to Dave and Mr. Gillum from Mackey in February of 2010. I cannot tell you at all why that change in scope of services, which was performed, was not included in the contract, particularly when it appears that you got more than what the contract required you to pay for. That's what my review has shown me. Now, I can't answer every one of your questions because clearly the people who know this as to what discussions went on aren't here, but I'll give it a shot.
You had mentioned that there was somebody made a decision to amend the contract that was signed versus the contract that was shown to the board the night the resolution was passed.
Yeah, and I don't know which contract was shown to you. If it was the same one that was given to Rick, then...
There's two. There's one that was shown to the board and the board only. It's not even on public content. The public can't even see it. So here's where I'm having some trouble. I'm getting asked by the community why this looks like they were misled. They watched the video. You can watch the video now, and it shows that this was a guaranteed performance contract, and that the shortfall in energy savings would be reimbursed to the district on an annual basis. And now we're finding out from some other meetings that we've had in the last couple months that there was a vote that it was stipulated. We just decided to stipulate it. We decided to save $340,000 and go the stipulated route. And I don't know that it's ever presented that we had a choice to go between $2.54 million and $2.2 million, or whatever the difference of that $340,000. And so it's misleading. And I've got all of the energy dollars that were spent on electricity 3 years prior and 3 years after, and minimum there's about $50,000 worth of savings for these first 3 years, and that don't even include the operational or the capital savings.
And that's what you have found to be the total savings in that amount of time?
They were showing 105. I'm coming up about 55.
Okay.
So there's about 50. And these first few years are going to be good because we're not going to be replacing fixtures. But we get into years 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now we're going to have to start spending capital and maintenance to replace fixtures, and that's going to eat into our savings that we were $65,000 a year that they were projecting for savings. So there's definitely
I think
some money that we need to try to get back.
You have to be very cognizant of a few things. The board authorized the superintendent to enter into the contract. There's nothing wrong with this resolution. It's a legal resolution.
Correct.
This is one of the duties that the board may delegate. There are certain non-delegable duties. For instance, hiring a superintendent or hiring someone. You can't delegate that to someone else.
Correct.
So if it were a contract of that sort, it would be void ab initio because there would be no authority to enter into it.
Right.
This contract Mr. Gillum had authority to enter into it.
Correct, and he signed it himself.
And he signed it himself, as he would, given the resolution.
Right.
Okay? So there's that. This is not a contract that was entered into without authority.
Correct.
So that's one of the bases for setting aside.
Well, and this may be a question that I need to ask the rest of the board. There's some of the board members that know it was stipulated and they never signed it, or there's never any meeting that shows up that says they saw where Bob signed it.
There would not have to be a meeting
How would they know it was stipulated?
that Bob signed it, because you already authorized.
Okay, but how would they know it was stipulated if they never saw the contract?
Obviously, I don't have an answer to that, because I could not know what other people saw or did not see. If people saw if you saw the attachments, A through G, and you read them, you would read in attachment D that it was in fact a stipulated contract. Do not make the mistake of saying that that is not a guaranteed contract. That is a guaranteed contract. It's just a different form of one. And as Rick said, when you talk about the savings that you've looked at, you do have to account for all the variables. So if you wanted to bring some sort of an action under this contract as it is.
Does it meet the requirements of the school code?
Yes.
It does?
It does.
Because we're measuring and verifying on an annual basis?
No, because you have stipulated.
But the school codes, there's no language in it that talks about stipulated. I guess that's where I'm confused.
Stipulated savings are, all right, this contract or this was approved by ISB, right? So there's your step. Stipulated savings can be considered guaranteed savings. They're not measured and approved because they are agreed to in advance based on the data that's available from manufacturers. Now, if you look at just costs of savings, there are so many variables that you have to factor in. Are the hours, what is the rate, the difference in the rate? What's the difference in the operation of the building? What is the difference in the number of days that it's operated? How many students on it? Are there rooms that were not used before that are used now? So that's the kind of thing you would have to undertake. The reason there, I guess, are stipulated savings is because that's an ungodly expensive sort of thing.
So do we have any recourse? Because based off my figures, $50,000 a year for 20 years, we're looking at about $1 million.
I would say that the only thing that you could possibly, you've already stipulated to these savings. You can't undo something that was agreed to unless there was a material misrepresentation. If they said, we're going to measure and verify every year, and they snuck in some stipulated savings, sure, but I'm not saying Amoresco did that, and I don't believe they did that. So that's the only way that you could address this, because there are just certain grounds for overturning contracts. You can't do it just because you figure out later that you made a bad deal, or you don't like it, or you wish you had done something else. None of those are good reasons. You have to have material misrepresentations, for instance. The other part of this is that it has been ratified, I'll say, through the payment process. Gillum signed it at some time at the end of May or early June, and it was paid off in September, I guess. And all those were approved. It was paid off in 3 installments. That was all approved. So there was performance. They gave you all of the equipment they said they were going to give you. They gave you more, in fact, than the scope of services said they were going to give you, and you paid for those. So the only way there really is no way out of this particular bargain. If there was evidence uncovered of a material an actual misrepresentation, perhaps, but I have not seen anything like that.
I have a question.
Sure.
The calculations for the ultimate $171,000 in savings, I have yet to see any sort of worksheets regarding that.
Yeah.
Now, where are they? Actually, I'm addressing this question to you, Laura Lee, but I'm also addressing it to everyone here. It seems to me that unless there is really good worksheets and calculations as to how this 171K was determined, that it could just be a guess. I could make a guess. My guess would be wrong, but
Yeah, it would have to be
well,
based
okay.
on something.
This is the 105, right? But now the ultimate is 171 in the.
Was 170, 556.
Okay,
Yeah,
right.
that's what it is. But the annual savings, the energy savings themselves, that's the 105, 556. That's what you're supposed to get each year in energy savings from the ECMs and the other equipment that were installed.
Yeah, okay, and here.
The other two components are repair
Right,
and
but here's the problem. I mean, Rick did show me the famous Gene Mackey memo.
yeah.
Aren't there supposed to be Dave Murphy, this is a question to ask you. For example, interior lighting for intermediate school. It was listed at basically $254K. Well, do you have any backup work papers so that I could just look to see how that $254K was calculated?
$254K
$254,000.
for installation?
It says interior, energy saving. Well, first of all, you have to do the cost. Then you have to do the energy saving.
This one's a
Okay.
little bigger.
15,000.
That one's a little bigger.
I mean, anybody can put numbers on a spreadsheet. That's what I'm trying to get at. So do we have any backup for this stuff?
There was a breakdown by fixture of the KW usage of each fixture. And there is a count per building, the amount of fixtures that are in the building. We would have to go back and take a look at what was initially installed in 1976, for instance, and measure or calculate the difference in KW usage between the new fixture and the old fixture.
So did you all do that?
I didn't do that, no.
Who did?
To my knowledge, Ameresco provided that information.
But no one double-checked the reasonableness of their numbers?
I did not.
Is there any way we can get those work papers, Laura Lee?
I can sure open a dialogue with Gene Mackey, and he's already indicated, I think, that he wanted to be available and address these kind of questions. So I think that would be an excellent idea.
I don't know if we need a motion. I mean, who knows?
No, it's
when
not
a
an
motion is
action.
needed or not, but
No, it's just a direction.
numbers are numbers, and you can bring any numbers in. You can put any numbers in a worksheet. And if I saw the detail behind these numbers and they looked good, I'd feel a lot more comfortable.
Right, and I think that that's probably the one thing that will give folks comfort, and because you can't just say, look, this is what we're spending now and this is what we spent then, because there are too many variables.
Right.
And the kind of comparative analysis you're talking about would be incredibly time-consuming in-house and incredibly expensive outside. So I think go to the source.
Correct.
So you're saying we really don't have much we can do right now?
No, there isn't. No. It's a validly entered into contract with authorization and stipulated savings that can be used as guaranteed savings. It's got the proper approvals.
Okay, then I got a question for the rest of the board, because, Rick, did you watch the video? March 22nd, Brandon and Susan?
Yeah.
I want to address Lisa, Jim, and Linda, because in January, when Jim brought this up, they told us that they had a choice to vote stipulate. That meeting says nothing about stipulate.
I didn't say that.
I don't think anybody said that.
I didn't say that. I didn't discuss stipulated savings until,
We discussed it, but the differences between it, and that was based on other information. But it was never
You said
discussed
you
in the
had a
meeting.
choice to vote stipulate
No, I
or to
didn't.
go measure and verify.
That was a choice, but I didn't say that we voted on the
Okay,
choice.
where did you hear that choice at? That's all, that's the only thing I want to know, because it's
It
not...
was somewhere in the documentation I saw it.
Can you show me some meetings where that showed up? Because I'm not
It wasn't in a,
anywhere.
I don't know that it was in a meeting.
I want to be able to put this thing on to rest so that I know what happened and I can tell the community what happened.
When did we sign this?
2010.
signed it,
June.
June's,
Well, that's when it was signed. It was in April.
You signed it May 20th.
March 22nd
I didn't
was
sign
when the
it, yeah.
resolution was passed.
Yes.
Mr. Gillum signed it on the 28th of May.
Right.
And I've got the videos. And I looked through.
Let me correct that, though. It was signed effective May 28th.
Right.
But it included changes
Yes.
that were not addressed until June 3rd or 4th, so just to be clear on that.
But does that make it legal?
Yeah, you can
backdated?
you can have in a contract effective whatever date is chosen between the parties.
But you guys remember having a choice to stipulate or measure and verify somewhere?
No.
I did not recall. I was presented to
recall.
us, the board president at the time didn't have an issue with it, and it was explained by Amoresco and by Mr. Gillum, and it made perfect sense, so we voted yes.
Have you seen the video? From March 22nd? It completely goes against what you guys told the rest of us on January 29th. And I just want to clear things up.
January
And if there's-
29th this year?
Yes. And during roundtable, Jim brought up that the fact that we've been kicking around the Amoresco idea, and Dave was going to bring a presentation. And you guys talked about it's stipulated, but I watched the video and it says nothing about stipulated. So I'm curious where you got that at.
I got it from the meeting we had, that long discussion we had on, after Dave's report.
Well, before that, you talked about, when we very first talked about it, but to be honest, I do not recall. I just know that the presentation made sense at the time, and I just don't recall if it was stipulated.
Could have been part of the presentation.
No. I mean, I've watched the January, the February, and the March 22nd, 2010 videos, DVDs, more times than I would care to admit. And stipulated, the presentation in January was that the contract was agreed to be stipulated. It was mentioned numerous times by the three members still sitting on the board.
But it wasn't, we didn't, I can't speak for the other two, but it wasn't stated by me that it was stipulated in that meeting at that time, back in 2010.
And
You're
the
right.
purpose of this accusation
Well, and I don't
is for
think
what
we
purpose?
talked about it at all.
On January 29th.
It's not an accusation, Linda. It's not an accusation. It's just a statement of events. It's not an accusation.
Well, it sure sounds like it.
I don't think
It made sense. I mean, it made sense, and
That's
as it was explained to us, and we voted for it.
And it makes perfect sense.
Discussion and presentation by Amoresco.
So I think that honestly, the best thing for you to do now is talk to Amoresco and have them answer these questions, rather than have people try to rely on their memories as to something that happened 4 years ago and then draw conclusions from that when the memories are faulty, because it's difficult.
Sure, and I think we got an email from Mr. Mackey. Carrie, do you know if...
He did, and I told him that he's welcome to address, my response was that he's welcome to address the board at any of their public meetings, because there's a place on the agenda before and after the meetings to address the board, but I have not heard back from him, and that was before last month's board meeting.
I would think he would like to know some idea, some scope.
Sure.
And that would...
It would help, because
I could reach out to him and ask him to come if you guys would like.
Well, you've
I did.
extended the invitation.
Right. He didn't respond, so.
But thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes.
I didn't know if you wanted to ask
Your
him
side
to come.
of things.
Thank you. So you do not want me to reach out to Gene Mackey and invite him to come, or you do?
I'd like to talk to him, yeah.
What's up?
Did you talk to, my email regarding the minutes, have you had a chance?
That's later on the agenda.
I know it is later in the agenda, but I didn't know what to do.
Well, I can give my comments right now, and you can just work it into.
If it's okay with you.
The difference between the February 1 situation that you talked about in your email, and this has to do with publishing minutes that should have been part of the open session in the first place. So they were included in closed session minutes and closed session discussions, but belong in the public. So Carrie and Joe and Betsy spent a good deal of time going through all of those minutes, and partially in response to a FOIA request, and I assisted with that. And I told Carrie that to put the minutes on where all the other open meeting minutes are on the website, to call them additional minutes, and to put them by the date of each additional minute. Then I think there was going to be a statement today that told which meetings would have additional minutes.
Okay.
Now, there are two things. You couldn't review them certainly in closed session because they shouldn't have been in closed session. So you're not going to review them in closed session because now you have two problems. You don't want to do that. You don't want to compound the problem. And I understand that, but you do want to look at them. But however, they weren't part of it, so they had to go directly into the public minutes. They were approved already as to content. So the folks here who weren't a part of those meetings can't really unapprove something that was already approved by the former board that actually sat through the meeting. The reason it's different from February 1 is because February 1 wasn't a meeting. It wasn't a meeting at all. There was no proper approval because there was no proper meeting. Here you've had appropriate approval by the persons who were sitting in the meeting and said, yes, this is what happened. We've already approved these. They're in the wrong place, so they've been moved out into the right place.
Okay, but my question is this. I mean, it's not about a point, it's not about a point of law, but when I actually went to those meeting minutes, it doesn't say additional meeting minutes as part of the title. And to me, it should say additional.
It says it on the link.
It says it on the link
But not on the
properly,
page.
but it doesn't say it on the title. So for one thing, I think, and it sounds like you are in agreement with my observation, that this addition should have additional minutes labeled.
Sure, it wouldn't hurt anything.
And then the second point is that at the bottom of the page, it should be noted, added on March 24th or whenever. Because if there are subsequent additions as a result of another review where further additions can be then moved to open, we've got to have a mechanism to keep track of these additions. And the date would be the best mechanism.
Well, we don't.
But there are two different things here. We're not talking about closed session minutes that are being moved to open, that are now being,
Isn't that what we're doing?
No.
Okay.
Because these aren't closed. It's kind of a legal fine point.
Okay.
They're not closed session minutes because they didn't belong in closed session.
Okay. So they were erroneously in closed session?
Yes.
Okay. Got that
And there
point.
are a couple of very recent minutes like that too that have to be added. There is something you're supposed to do every 6 months. You review your closed session minutes, but you already do that every month. So that's one step you don't have to retake. You already approve your closed session minutes.
Well, we need to, not until you've helped us.
That's good. You've done that. You do that.
Right.
The other part of that 6-month thing is to decide what to release from closed session.
Okay.
That's different from what you're doing now. That takes a board resolution. This does not. Okay?
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, moving on. We have our construction phase 1 update. Mr. Murphy and...
When I ask Mike Zellers and Corey Hope to come up and talk about phase 1 updates.
And you have a copy in your board packet of the updated spreadsheet that we've been working with since we started this process, which is right here.
Mike's going to go ahead and explain that, but I'll go ahead and explain progress as we're doing now. Over at GES, we're substantially complete throughout the whole project. We're working on the outside site work now. Going to finish up the storm piping as well as put in the playground and then fine grade all the soil and get that seeded, and we'll eventually be closed up with that. Over at Ball, again, we're working outside. Inside has been completed, and ISB has been through and gave us occupancy on that. Let me step back to GES. Our ISB inspection is April 1st, and so we'll be looking forward to getting that out of the way. Jumping back to Ball, we have Henson Robinson's on site now, putting on the roof, finally. And they're working their way to that. Probably in a couple weeks they'll be finished up with that. And then from there we'll do some site grading and some landscaping and getting that all buttoned up. And then over at GIS, we hit a big milestone. We are open through our front doors. And it was a push. It wasn't too bad, but we got it done, and everything's done except for, again, the outside. We have some landscaping to do, and then Henson Robinson with some metal work. So we are watertight. Today was the first day kids got to tour the new facility, and everything looks good. Liz? All right, I got the thumbs up from the principal. So
ribbon cutting was today.
Yep, and we had a ribbon cutting ceremony at 1 a.m. or 1 a.m. 1 p.m. And so all in all, everything is good.
I'd just like to interject that Henson Robinson behind because of weather.
Correct. Yes, they are behind because of weather. So don't want to throw them under the bus. So.
Any questions for Corey? Great job. Good.
I have one question. Okay, so I guess, Mike, this may need to be addressed to you, I don't know. Okay, the contractor payments process, they're shaded in pink, correct?
Contractor payments processed?
Are shaded in pink.
Well, there's a lot of them that are not.
No, I know, but the color coding means that they have been paid.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, well, it means actually that project is finalized out, that you finalized out those projects.
Okay, so basically these are hard numbers.
Right, right. The pink ones, matter of fact, to this list, I think we added one line, which was this building for this month. Now, you haven't paid that because that's probably on your bills receivable for this month, but all of the pink ones should be hard numbers and paid out. All of the white lines are projects yet to be completed, pending weather, and of course the additions that are going to lag a little bit longer. So yeah, the bottom line on that is that we're almost 92% paid out across the board on all of phase 1 work. Now, it's not all complete, but about 92% paid out. So. More questions?
Well, we're 92% paid out, meaning hard numbers, correct?
No.
Oh, okay. So I guess I have one quick question. Is this, for example, on Ball Elementary School, this $1.351 million, I don't care, is that a hard number, or is that still open for
No, that's
cost overrun?
that's you should have that for bills payable this month.
Okay.
That is what's been paid on the project so far.
Yes, every month. Now, what I've done is if I get a pay application in and I approve it and send it to David, I include it, assuming that it's going to be paid.
Okay.
So, on this bills payable, which you should have in front of you this month.
Right.
And so I'm I'm a little bit in advance, but assuming that you don't reject any payment, then it's going to be accurate, so. And this chart does change all the time, Any more questions?
Any other questions, board members, on any of this?
Might as well just stay there.
No. Okay, thank
Stay
you.
there, we're moving on here. Let me get my papers.
Great. Let's see, are we on? We are on to GIS Interior then?
As a result of our bidding process, using our CM to garner our subcontractors, we're recommending tonight that Harold O'Shea enter into the contracts with his subcontractors in the amount of $2,038,173. That'll be their guaranteed maximum pricing. Our budget was $22,590,900. And tonight we are recommending that Phase 2, we start Phase 2. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure thing. Every once in a while you have a pleasant surprise on bids, and fortunately we have one to present tonight. So we, through some aggressive subcontractor bidding on the project, we are well under what we anticipated the project coming in at a specific line item budget. There's a lot of discussion in our preliminary estimates about where we thought and we presented this to you last time about where we thought those numbers might come in. And fortunately, we were surprised at the aggressive bidding by the subcontractors that looked at the project. We're happy to report that all of our subcontractors appear to be contractors we've worked with before, and we anticipate a smooth project over the 2 months that we have to do it. So
this is all summer work, right?
This is all summer work. Very aggressive.
So no more snow days, so you can get started on it.
Very aggressive. I think that actually probably, in some ways, that can hurt you on bidding, in some ways that can help, because that allows a subcontractor to jump in, make that money quickly in a short time frame, jump back out, look at other projects. So,
what is? Can you explain the alternate bid one?
Yeah, the alternate bid one is renovations to the home ec area. We're doing some fairly minor modifications, consolidating some things, doing some HVAC work, etc. One of the reasons why it's kind of an alternate bid was because we wanted that pressure relief if we had any overages on the bidding, and fortunately we didn't have that, so we're able to include that in the project and move forward with that. There's 5 different areas of the project that get renovated within that 2-month time frame. There's different work that goes on associated with that. There's other contracts, other contractors involved with other contracts that'll be working at the same time as we're working on this contract with HVAC subcontractors, etc. So there's a lot of coordination that has to happen, not only with our contract, but with other contractors under separate contracts to the district. So, but we see that everybody working as a team and getting it all done when we say we're going to get it done. So, I think we've got a plan of attack ready to go for it. Unfortunately, we've got some contingency to work with, and we've got some, we're under on everything overall, so.
Those 5 areas are, you've got the cafeteria, you've got some construction, go ahead.
We got the administration, we got the home ec area, which is area 1. We have the administration area that has been vacated. We have the commons area and the kitchen. We have classrooms that get added to the field house. And then we have, the last is the ag area. We're going to be doing some work in there as well, industrial arts.
Anything else? Any questions?
Nothing else for me.
Just a comment. I had the pleasure today of attending the ribbon cutting at the school, and what you all have done there is astonishing. That building was hard to get into, and there was 2 separate entrances, and rounding it out and adding the space that you have and expanding what we have inside for the dollars, it's an incredible change to the district, and I think helps keep moving us forward to save quality classrooms we want for the district for a long time. I couldn't think of a more efficient way to use that space. So congratulations and thank you for your efforts on that.
Looks great. Okay. Any other questions? Anything else to add? No?
Nothing else.
That's it? Okay. Need a motion then to approve the Phase 2 additions, or remodeling, I should say, Phase 2 remodeling projects at GIS for a total of $2 million. Let me make sure I get this number right here. $2,038,173.
And this is all part of the referendum.
This is all part of the referendum,
within
yes.
the budget, and we're good.
Below budget, below what we had budgeted, so.
I'll make that motion.
Definitely does. Thanks, Steve. Second. Thank you, Rick. Call the roll, please.
Cobb.
Yes.
Maddox.
Yes.
Petermeyer.
Yes.
Weitzel.
Yes.
Worley.
Yes.
Carter.
Yes.
Nuisance.
Yes. Okay. Next item we have is GIS HVAC bid results. Dave?
Heard Greg talk about other contractors that'll be in the area during this summer. This is one of the projects we got outstanding. In 5th grade wing at GIS, we have lost 50% of the air conditioning. One reason for replacement. It has reached the end of its life cycle. Another reason for replacement. In addition to that, this contract, or this bid, provides the HVAC complement to the GIS interior renovation. So the ag area or the industrial arts area will get new air, the new classrooms will get new air. There'll be some modifications to the air in the old admin area, which will turn into classroom area. The commons area will be modified slightly. Those are the kinds of things that will take place under this contract. It is geothermal equipment. The wells will be sunk in the athletic area between GMS and GIS. Mike, you got anything to add?
No. Remember last meeting, we looked at another very, very similar project at GMS. This is kind of the same project going on, geothermal at GMS. Last month we presented, we were about $212,000, I think, over budget. We all kind of reluctantly accepted that. Well, now we're starting to go back the other way. Greg presented about a $550,000 savings. This one is over a little bit, about $76,000. But if you add them all up, we're still on we turned the tables now. We're in on the good side of everything. So.
Yeah, because didn't King Lar get the bid on GMS?
King Lar did get the bid on GMS, and they didn't this time. We stayed local here with E.L. Pruitt. E.L. Pruitt was a contractor that you used last summer at Ball.
Right.
And did a fine job. King Lar has already started actually on some of their field work, so I think they're going to turn out to be a very good contractor.
You say you're going to put the wells for the geo in the athletic area?
The space between the running track and the fence to the east side, there's a strip of grass that they go in.
Okay, you're just going to do
They line up their wells, their vertical wells, and then they'll cross the road and go into the alleyway between the field house and the fifth grade wing. So.
Any questions? Nothing? Okay. Need a motion then to approve the HVAC additions at GIS, that contract going to E.L. Pruitt for a total of $1,304,089. Need a motion to approve that?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Rick. And a second, please.
I'll second.
Thank you, Susan. Call the roll, please.
Radis.
Yes.
Petermeyer.
Yes.
Weitzel.
Yes.
Worley.
Yes.
Carter. Yes. Cobb.
Yes.
Nucis.
Yes. Next item we have is GMS and BES carpet replacement. Dave.
Administration recommending Carpet Weavers as the low contractor. Betsy, can you open up the bid results? We do have some alternates in this, and Mike, help me out here because I get lost in these.
Yeah, we had a lot of the carpet or the flooring replacement. It's going. Some of the classrooms are going with a little bit of carpet back in them, and mostly floor tile. That's a request from the administration.
Similar to how GES is set up.
Yes, exactly. But we did, to control the budget, we did establish several alternates, just to make sure that we could cherry pick a little bit depending on where bids came in. This project came in under, about almost 8% under, so we're on the good side of this one as well. But the first alternate that we had at Ball was for painting of the outside walls in the classrooms. That last year when we removed the old mechanical equipment, all we did was patch it, and we didn't paint the entire wall. We just kind of spot patched it. That's going to fix it up and put new vinyl base, when we do the flooring and stuff in there. The next alternate was for 3 classrooms in the preschool wing, far southeast end of the building. They want some new wall cabinets, for the smaller children in there, as well as the sink cabinets lowered just a little bit so that they're more adaptable to the age group that's in there. The last alternate that we set up was some floor patching in the corridor with floor tile. The whole entire rest of the school, there's due to age, there's some cracked floor tile running across the corridors, largely due to building expansion and movement, which is very common. We're fixing those, but there was some extra area down in the southeast wing that we're going to do the same thing in. So we just took it because it wasn't original part of the original scope, we just added it in. And then at the library, at GMS, the library is, you notice there's only, the low bid was a little over $18,000 to replace the carpet in the library, but there's a big component of the work that goes on at GMS, and that's the asbestos abatement. We haven't opened those bids yet, so we are recommending that you award this contract without that GMS alternate bid number 1 until we open those bids to see what the asbestos is going to cost at that building. Asbestos is something that can vary considerably. It's really driven by how much work the asbestos contractors have, and how full they think their summer is, because that's when they do most of their work. So we do have other abatement work going on in that school. The West Pod area, the 1957 building, has some carpet over VAT, and whenever you have that going on, it's automatically an abatement project, so we have to take care of that. But we know we could get the carpet in the library, we just don't know if we've got almost $100,000 to do abatement in that building. And we just want to err on the cautious side instead of signing you up for replacing that carpet before we know what the full abatement cost is going to be.
And the date for the asbestos bid opening?
We're going to open the bids for the asbestos, I think it's April the 10th. So, and we have 60 days, to hold these bids open. What I would recommend, we award everything but that alternate, and then we can just add that on depending on how the bids come out.
Any questions?
I do have a question. The alternate bid, number 2, the work on that for the cabinets was, could you repeat what that cabinet work was?
Yeah, there's some wall cabinet. There's 3 preschool classrooms at the far southeast wing area.
Right.
They've requested some wall cabinets in those, right above where the coat hooks go for storage, basically storage in that area. And then there's a couple of low base cabinets. One of them has a sink in it. And they're 30 inches high. They want them dropped 4 inches so that the little kids can use them easier. There was something also that was added, so we didn't feel like we could just throw it in. We just asked for a separate declared price. Gives you the option to accept it or
Do we
not.
have a schedule like this for phase 2 yet?
Not yet. We've started
When are we going to
one.
get that? Because
We haven't bid enough projects yet to include anything.
okay, so we're taking this out, you're asking approval to take it out to bid, or you're asking us to approve the bid?
These are the
To approve the bid.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, I'm really in a conundrum, because when you verbally explained to me, the need to lower the cabinets, it sounds reasonable. But I don't know the full picture. And later on down the line, I don't know because I don't know the full picture, I don't know that I want to spend $16,800 on lowering the cabinets versus buying furniture for a classroom or having tech equipment or something like that. So how can you help me out in that regard?
Well, the only thing I can tell you is that, we started with a budget, for all the flooring replacement at both schools. And we're just working against those budgets. And in this case, this one happens to be under budget so far.
Do we have that? Do we have a phase 2 schedule that lists this? Am I missing that? Have I received that?
In a broad sense, some of these smaller projects that have been added, you won't see.
Well, see,
This was months ago that we presented on phase 2 projects.
Okay, well, I guess that's where I would appreciate Mike starting in again and even adding in some of these projects. I think it's time to start this page, because if this is being requested but we haven't seen it before, I have no idea. I can't judge the merit of this when I don't see what I'm comparing it to. Anybody else feel that way, or you all comfortable with?
Well, Susan, the only thing on the phase 2 list is the flooring at Ball Elementary. So they must have had a need to increase some cabinets. Or do you say you're lowering them in some of the rooms?
The base cabinets.
Pre-K.
Yeah, the base cabinets, the ones sitting on the floor. The wall cabinets are new. There are not wall cabinets there now. So. I'm not sure which list you're looking at, Steve, but is it, does that list all the projects? There should be GMS. Is there not GMS flooring on there?
Yes, the flooring is on there.
One was, they were both about $150,000 total budget. Now that included asbestos abatement and so on and so forth. So.
Right, but under Ball, the only thing is flooring.
Yes.
So I guess that's where she's questioning the cabinets. The cabinets, the paint,
Yeah, they were added. At administration request. So. But we did ask for a separate price for it. So.
I'm not faulting you in any way, shape, or form, Mike. I mean, I just feel like I'm at a loss because we need more structure and more reporting on these small projects that are added.
I think we can add these as we approve them. I mean, they'll be added, then we'll start a phase 2 thing as we approve them.
Well, I guess my understanding of what she's asking, are they stuff that just because we've got a little extra money, we're just going to throw them in because they're on a list somewhere, or are they a priority, or?
Joe, do you mind talking to the priority or the need? I don't mean to put you on the spot, but.
Sure.
I just did.
No, in terms of the cabinets and all of that in the room, the one side of the hallway for pre-K are some smaller classrooms, and the other side, the north end of the hallway are more designed for kindergarten-type classrooms, and we do have a structured pre-K room over there. With that, there is limited storage space, which was the need to look to see if we could add some sort of cabinetry in there, that being the overhead cabinets that they were seeking to put above the coat racks that the students use, so that it doesn't take up any more really usable classroom space. It's kind of out of the way for some of their supplies, as opposed to putting cabinets or roll-ins or filing systems in the room that would take away from space accessible to students. As for the sinks, because we were talking about 3- and 4-year-olds primarily, with some 5-year-olds, they're shorter students, a lot of at-risk students, some students with special needs in there. Right now, the sinks are at an awkward height for them to be able to wash their hands without using some sort of step stool or assistance. And what we have found is that the hand washing is a very large component when the state comes in and performs their audits. So we thought that this might be an opportunity to be able to increase the accessibility for adequate hand washing, which would therefore get us further compliance with the compliance and auditing purposes. It's known as our ECHRs, the environmental rating scales of the classroom, so thought that this might be an avenue to be able to address those needs. Okay. I don't know if that helps.
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
I think too, Dave, what would help is like, I know for me, the background statements that come with our board doc stuff, it would help if, for instance, in this case, you said it was mentioned that since the original approval of the scope of the project, these items have been added above and beyond what we originally approved, just to help draw our attention to those as we get into these sorts of discussions.
Yes. Any other questions?
Yeah, just for clarification, we've got this sheet that's got the $35 million at the bottom, and we've got about 15 at the top. It was phase 1, about 18 at the bottom, and some change for phase 2. And it's broke down by school with some numbers. As the planned stuff comes in and it's under bid, are we going to keep adding stuff to get to these numbers so that each school can use this as a total, or are we, or have we got a set number of stuff that's included with Chatham Elementary under phase 2 and a set number of stuff that's under?
So far, we have not. We have not added any, other than, some incidental small projects. We haven't changed the scope significantly.
Our intent is to show you those in alternates. Okay. So you have an opportunity to thumbs up or thumbs down.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. But I'd like to see that if we come in with phase 2 well underneath the 18 million, and we'll have some extra money left over out of 35.
Let me talk to that for just a moment too, because there's now a phase 3. Okay, and because of the way we're being funded, we have to extend out to a phase 3. This year we only get $6.9 million. That's reduced the scope of work for phase 2. Okay, which is why we're asking for HLS to support the asphalt projects. So you're going to see a Phase 2, but it's going to be different than your Phase 2 that you see there.
So some of the stuff's going to come out of 2 and go to 3?
Exactly.
Okay.
And some of the things that we've talked about in the past, chemistry labs for high school, tech spaces, we've talked about them, we've not priced anything.
Okay.
Those will show up in an alternate in some fashion.
So could we have an update of that schedule that reflects the current bonding situation, i.e. some of those items have been moved to
We'll break it down in Phase 2, now that we know what we're limited to.
Correct.
Which we just found out. We'll correct that, add the Phase 2 and add the Phase 3 to the correct numbers.
So that would be good with what Brandon suggested as well.
We have already started a Phase 2 spreadsheet, but we don't have enough numbers, to fill it out efficiently, but it'll be coming. As well as a Phase 3 will be coming as well.
Anything else?
Any other questions? You'll indulge me here for a minute. I just want to do the math, so I got the right number here.
Is there any urgency that we have to approve this tonight? I mean, we don't, is there a time-sensitive need to this?
Some of the materials, we need to start gathering materials
This is
that
summer
are
work,
available
right?
for summertime work.
This is summer work. way I get it, we're looking, Dave, tonight or Mike, to approve on this, the $195,552 for carpet weavers minus the $18,229, which, if my math is right, it's $177,323.
That's correct.
Okay, so that would be the motion. Need a motion then to approve that $177,323 for the two carpet weavers for the projects as outlined in the flooring replacement work in your board packet tonight.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Lisa. And a second, please.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Linda. And call the roll, please.
Yes, Petermeyer.
Yes.
Weitzel.
Yes.
Morley.
Abstain.
Carter.
Yes.
Cup.
Yes.
Maddox.
Yes.
Newsom.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Next item we have is a post-retirement incentive bonus information. No, this is what the...
Correction, yeah. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Mike.
The agenda item that you have, 10.1, is an MOU that is being recommended administratively that we enter into this MOU again. This was one that was born when we had our our reductions last year. We had some outside the box thinking about how we might incentivize some of our teachers who are eligible to retire but have chosen not to yet, how we might offer an incentive to them to take retirement earlier than what they had planned. So we really had, last year we had two pools of people. One are a group who are already in the 6% pipeline, so they've already determined that they're retiring within 4 years. And then there is a second group who is also eligible to retire but has not yet declared a date upon which they would retire, so they're not in the 6% pipeline. So what we did last year, and we're proposing again the same structure, is that they be offered a retirement incentive, and this incentive would be paid out after post-retirement, so that then it doesn't, it's not part of their pensionable salary. earnings, but instead it's paid post-retirement, and it's based on two calculations. One is $650 per service credit year within the district. And then the other calculation is the difference between their ending salary, their salary, and this year's salary. So for example, if someone was set to retire in 3 years, we would look at that salary and subtract it from the current this year's salary. And so those are the two calculations that we have. And we have a handful of people. We have 12 people who are eligible to retire and have not, they're eligible to retire right now after this year and have not chosen to do so. Like I said, some of them there are 5 who are currently in the pipeline, and then there are 7 who are not yet in the pipeline. So we know that looking at if all of them would choose to take the incentive, that it would be a savings, and if you calculate that you would replace them at approximately $40,000, the savings is about $83,000. Now, the caveat this year that we have is that we don't yet know, for those that aren't, those 7 that I talked about that aren't in the pipeline yet, we don't yet know what their salaries will be even next year because we haven't negotiated those salaries. So at that point, this is an unknown. And what we were suggesting in the MOU is that we state that it would be based on whatever their salary would be for next year. We would take the difference between that, whatever is negotiated, and this year's salary, and then the $650 per year of service credit within the district. So that's the one difference in this than we had last year. So it's difficult to really have a clear definition of what might be that savings, but it's approximately $83,000. So what we also looked at last year and this year is making sure that the district breaks even, or obviously the goal would be to it to be to our advantage. And that is the case even if, let's say, just one person chooses it, there is still some savings to the district based on the replacement teacher's salary. So that's what we're proposing. At this point, what we do is we negotiate. We can't, by law, individually bargain with individual members, and so what we do is we enter into a conversation with the BCEA. They actually approached us to say, are you interested in doing something like this again this year, like you did last year? And so we said, let's look at it, let's pull the numbers, and that's exactly what we did to see what it might, what benefit there might be to the district. And then at that point, then after we've negotiated a general incentive, then individual members could decide whether or not they choose to elect that incentive and go ahead and put in their irrevocable letter of resignation or of retirement.
I have a question to ask you. You made the statement that it was salary based on $40,000, and I have seen this calculation before. But did you go back and look at the $40,000 that you used as the beginning salary relative to your new hires that you made last year? Because sometimes when you have a replacement of a retiree, it doesn't come in at $40,000.
You're exactly right.
So did you double check this estimate relative to the actual numbers?
Yeah, remember when you had asked us to, I didn't put it in this spreadsheet, but remember when you had asked us of these additions or changes after we had in February of last year, after we proposed our budget savings, and we said it was about $3.1 million, you had asked us, I think in an open session as well as in the Finance Committee meeting, to go back and continue to analyze those costs. Analyze, for example, when we added some SRO time, when we added a few aides, and so you had asked us to keep a running chart, and we did that. So it would be in those charts where we did have an analysis of what we've saved since then, but I haven't plugged them into this retirement incentive bonus, but there is savings.
Yeah,
so.
Actually, that wasn't what I was referring to, but remember that schedule that was prepared that Michelle prepared, and it had the new hire's name and then what that salary was?
Yes, that's what I was referring to.
Well, have you looked, I'm just saying, well, this is a typical year, so we're going to choose replacements that are not solely at $40,000.
Right,
so
you're right.
Did you look at that, the average of that number from that schedule relative to the $40,000 that you used in the schedule?
No, I just threw that number out there. That's why I said it, because this is the figure. But you're right, there are times when, for example, if at the high school we need a teacher who is certified to teach dual credit, you would need someone who has a master's degree in that content area. And so you would need to replace that person with somebody with a master's degree. But regardless, there is savings. That's why I said, and the savings is kind of, while I say it's $80,000, it may be less than that. There still is savings to be had, but it could be less than that, depending on which we replace with new teachers straight out of college and which we replace with, for example, someone who we might need, someone with a master's degree for a dual credit position. So,
actually, I thought about that after our finance committee meeting, but I didn't have a sure. But I do think we should not use estimates when we have actual numbers that we can use as part of our budgeting, planning, everything.
Well, I don't have actual budget numbers for next year.
No, I'm just saying in the future, I mean, I would just would feel more comfortable that if you take that average from that schedule and you use that average salary, make sure we're still good, we're still in the black.
You will be good,
We're still making money.
In the good, yeah. Because the staff that, as you know from the finance committee, that the staff that, the majority of those who I think would take it are in the 6%, and they are at much higher salaries. Okay. So, but that's a good point.
Any other questions? Now I need a motion then to approve the recommendation that we enter into this non-binding memo of understanding with the BCEA as presented this evening. I shouldn't say non-binding, non-precedent setting. Yes.
I will make that motion.
Thank you. Second, please. Thank you, Brandon. Call the roll. Brandon.
Worley.
Yes.
Carter. Yes. Cobb.
Yes.
Maddox.
Yes.
Kiermaier.
Yes.
Weitzel. Yes. Nusis.
Yes. Thank you. And on to financial, our food service audit. Patrick?
So this is informational only, try to be brief. There's several documents on here, you're welcome to review those. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. I'll touch on each one of them briefly. This first one is the cumulative. We found some documents that had been previously done, put together with a food service review to see what revenues were coming in, expenses were going out in the food service area, and it went as back as far as 96-97 school year. So that we had found the history on, had last been updated approximately in the 2010 school year. So the top part of this chart is sort of those numbers just represented for your information. After talking with our auditors this year, they had suggested that we look at the food service because it didn't appear that maybe we were, making money. So when we found this as part of that review, we just thought it would be good to have the entire picture. This was something the previous boards had probably seen at one time, so we wanted to recreate those numbers if we could, so we knew we were able to then project forward the way we were supposed to. And we were, for the most part, able to recreate many of those earlier year numbers. The bottom half of that chart is our numbers, rerun out of the same software, run out of Skyward again, showing the data. What I highlight here is, in orange, is the IMRF benefit. There appears that there was one line that just was not included as a cost to the food service in the previous reviews. So whenever someone had looked at these numbers, while it's a benefit to an employee, it just wasn't included in the labor costs. So it should have been, and we talked to the auditors about that, and it should have been there. So that's one number that will stand out to you across every year that just was not part of those other years. So that's what's there. At the bottom of that then is then just the profit and loss. What did we get in revenues for that year? What did we get? What did it cost us? Did the program make any money or lose any money? Now, it's not meant to be a revenue generator. I mean, it's not meant to be, bringing us lots of income, but it is supposed to be more of a break-even model. So we surely should be breaking even at that. So prices setting for our food should be such that we're not losing money, but also not saving money. You know what I mean? We should be going close to breaking even at the time. So that's the goal of the program. And then what was included was a column for the ending fund balance. So if the data was correct, and 96-97 is our base year, from that year forward, have we made money or lost money cumulatively moving forward? And unfortunately, as you can see, and I'll re-show this in another way, there were very few years when we actually were making money. This 05 year and the 06 year,
there's this larger number there in blue down there at the bottom. There was GMS renovation, so there was over 2 fiscal years, we renovated the cafeteria. So those are one-time fixed costs to renovating the cafeteria. However, they were coded to that, so I just include them as a cost, but also pull out that number just to highlight what the actual renovation cost, as opposed to the other cost that it was for the program for that year.
So renovation costs are included in
construction
2004? And that should go.
They were coded to the food service line. So that's why I highlight them. That's how they were coded. That's how they were included. So I want to show that they were construction costs specific to the renovation of that building and that area specifically. So they were earmarked specifically to the food service line.
But if we do that, then we're paying for it twice, because we paid for the construction, and then...
Which is a cost of the program.
And
I mean, there were...
There was asbestos in that space. Is that what started that whole construction project?
I wasn't here.
I don't know. I was.
It was an expansion. It was just expansion?
Yeah, expansion, we moved out the back, right?
More room.
But that should go under food service?
That's how it's been coded, and
Well, is that the right way to code it? I guess is my question, because that's... You'll never break even.
I include it, but I also keep track of the number and pull it out occasionally so you can see, absent that number, here's the rest of the data. So I kind of give you both numbers so you can make your own assumptions on that.
because if we are basing our lunch fees on construction...
It wouldn't in this, we're not doing that now, and I'm just showing you the history of that, and I keep that number highlighted so that we can keep that in our minds that this was a one-time high cost of just construction dollars. There weren't other capital outlay items that we were purchasing at that time.
He's not trying to recoup those
Right.
funds.
No, I'm just trying to paint the picture.
And I will add, based on the information that was predates all of us that was out there, so this is the...
In fact, there was even an asterisk up here that said these numbers include, and that was part of the original report, but that number includes the renovation. So that was even part of the original audit report, or summary reports that were provided to other boards. Okay. So to repaint this picture, sort of in a one-page summary. Well, actually, let's do this one first. So this says, where were we off? Where were those? Why were we off in certain years? And again, the two charts, the top chart with the large orange bars here includes the full number, includes the construction costs. It says, where were we off? The bottom chart excludes those from the data, but I keep them highlighted here. So if you want to get a true picture of really what the program was operating, I would really just look at the bottom chart, but you can see where in the numbers we rerun from our software compared to the reports that were there, and then and that's just through the 10-year, because obviously there weren't reports for the other current years, which the data is on there for what those are running us. You can see where we were primarily off, and obviously it's almost always the IMRF area in all of the areas. In the couple of cases, we actually had more revenue. It appeared in some of the later years. That's with the dark blue lines there. We actually had more revenue received than was even reported for those years. It looked like the reports that were being run ended in May. They didn't include the June data, so June expenses, but also June revenues. They just weren't part of those fiscal year reports. And they even said May 31st on the reports that were provided. So just to get the full fiscal year picture, we would obviously include all of the revenue for that year. So just gives you a breakdown on where we were, what the differences were, again, through that same reporting time period. This takes that same data, now just puts it in one chart, hopefully a little easier to see. And the left box is the original revenues, original expenses for each of those fiscal years, profit and loss, and what the running fund balance was. So they were thinking they had about $183,000 cumulative over the years that they'd made in the program. And the revised chart on the right now includes that other number, which also includes the construction costs for this purpose, and shows that we're actually only 3 years that we're actually profitable. It just is what it is. This is just so we can paint a picture and see what it is. If I take out the renovation costs, then that brings the running total down to $1.6 million still negative that we've been operating in the hole since that same time period. Other documents that we found show that just the lunch, the student lunch cost, what we were charging, back to that 95, as far back as 95, there was an increase to $1.40, and then not again until '03. There wasn't any increases for that time period. And then in '08, somewhere between '03 and '08, the price went to $1.70. And then in '09, it was increased to split between one level getting $1.90 and a lower elementary level getting $1.80. And then in FY13, of course, last year, we had an increase to $2. So that just gives you the history of just the lunches, not a la carte items and things like that, but just the student lunch meal costs. And I just note that in FY12, of course, we opened a brand new school, whole new building, whole new cafeteria. And at the same time, we moved GMS, we moved a grade out of GMS, so where they used to have 3, now they only had 2. So some of that was absorbed somewhere, but we still had a whole new building. And in FY13, of course, we had the contract that we ratified. So if you're looking at years, you could say, well, there were some anomalies. The contract ratification had to pay retro, so salaries might be up that year compared to other years. It just shows you where we're at with the program. There's a chart on here that just breaks it down by school, by location. Just says revenues by each of those locations, expenses by those locations, and then what profit and loss. So is a particular location making or losing money? And of course, we combined all 3 elementaries. We didn't try to break them out. You only have real recent data just for the 3rd elementary, and it just didn't make sense. So all 3 elementaries are considered one line, just to see how the elementaries are doing compared to the other schools. Not sure why GIS didn't get reported between 97 and 101. It's just how the accounting, I don't know. But I don't have anything specific for them for those years. Maybe they were included in the GMS numbers. I'm not sure how it was divided. But that's just there for, again, information. And so what it brings...
Let me add something to that. When we opened up the high school, we reorganized the district, and I think GIS, or the elementaries were 1 through 5, or K through 5 at the time, before that, and then you went to the junior high, then you went to GMS. So that's why you wouldn't have anything at GIS
Good point.
at the time.
So, right, because 01 was its first year?
Yes.
So there you go. Excellent. History I did not have.
Yeah.
All right.
I have a question on that.
Yeah.
The blue line here.
Yeah.
And maybe you can explain, or just go with one year, FY97 there.
Yeah.
You've got, on this list here, you've got, it says there was a loss of over $20,000 at GHS, a loss of over $36,000 at GMS, and at the elementaries over $80,000. What is the district plus side of $67,000? How do all those...
If I had to guess, I would say it's how they coded the revenues. That they coded revenues as like reimbursements from the food service. You get reimbursed for meals.
Sure.
That it's very likely the coding structure just coded it as a district revenue as opposed to per building.
Free and reduced.
Yeah, and they may have
just... So it goes in a district instead of the grade level.
So they either weren't able to, or just didn't separate it specifically by, well, this is what this building received, this is what this building received, whereas the other numbers are actually showing what they did receive, as in sales they physically made, lunches that people paid for at the location, whereas the district level would really be more of the reimbursement side. And so my assumption is that's just how they coded that. Likewise, there wouldn't be as many district level expenses, but that's just how something was coded.
I look at these numbers, especially that blue section there, okay?
Yeah.
And I look at that and and you see just wild swings from year to year on this stuff. From the same school, for example, you go
high school.
FY04 in the high school, from plus 19,000 to a minus 38,000 to a minus 108,000.
Yeah.
You go the other way, a minus 6 to a minus 36.
Well, and that could be because the revenues should be somewhat stagnant across, because that's how many meals we're selling. But then they could have been purchasing some equipment or doing something else. There could have been something else that causes that number to change, but
their expenses
we should have some
break even.
Well, yeah, and the ultimate goal is to have numbers that we can understand that are in there, as opposed to this all over the place.
Right.
And if you're going to put in, if you're going to put in capital outlay in this stuff, then you've got to what about capital outlay on the athletic side, or on some of the other extracurricular things, or the other items that you have in the district, as opposed to just...
Well, these would be related specific to the food service area, so like a warmer, a refrigerator, or thing. I mean, they would be equipment specific to that program. Correct. Yeah. So that's a good observation. I don't really have an answer right now.
I just wanted to make sure I was looking at the right thing.
You are. Yeah. So it kind of brings us to revenue. What do we do? Yeah, so some scenarios here, if you will. The top part of this chart looks at your main items, your breakfast, your student lunch, your adult lunch, and your milk. Pretty standard across all programs, all buildings. The a la carte items then listed below ran this originally in December and looked at the majority of the items that were getting the bulk purchase through the first semester of school, if you will. There are many more a la carte items throughout the district, but this was the ones receiving easily the bulk of the purchases. And this was just to get a scenario out there and sort of say, if this is what we're dealing with and this is the majority of our revenue, these are the majority of the things the students are buying, and of course the cafeterias are preparing and ordering, then if we didn't do anything, and of course we have a few assumptions, and the assumptions are that, expenses could otherwise sort of stay the same, salaries, benefits, other things could more or less stay the same for this coming year. Don't see any large increases. What would sale prices of items need to be in order to make the program, as it currently stands, at least a break-even point? And so the FY14 is the green column. That's just showing where we're projected to end the year in those areas. The purple is, say, if you took all of those items and increased them by 15 cents. But every time you increase, you assume there's going to be a drop-off in sales. As prices go up, a few people may not buy that would otherwise be buying. So I assume just a 10% drop in all of those items as well. So not only did we increase it, but then the number of items sold decreased by 10% over what we'd this current year, just for a model. And then that would tell us where we might, what those numbers would look like. Same thing for a quarter and same thing for 50 cents. And I'll just bring it down here to the bottom. What that's a long way of saying is that it would take, in this model, 50-cent increase on all of those items across the board to get you to potentially a break-even point. And that's not knowing, of course, what other kind of expenses there could be next year. Salaries, benefits, not known for next year yet. But that's an example of where we're currently at with the program. And to kind of paint that picture again, just the food, just the lunch items, and I mentioned this already, how the prices went up. If there had just been a dime increase on student lunch from the beginning of this chart forward, we'd be at $3.30 a student lunch. No one's, it's hard to believe, but there were so many years in between when there just wasn't even an incremental increase over time to kind of keep pace, that now we're in that boat of, well, somewhere we got to catch up. And we can't continue to operate in a deficit program. So any questions? This is just for information. What would be coming down the road later, of course, will be a recommendation on just kind of the next item is sort of on student fees, but this will relate to that. What are we charging for our program? We can't continue to operate it in this fashion.
Do we know what other districts charge for a meal? Do we have any idea?
We had looked at that at one point.
Where are we at comparatively in the county, or?
We'll have to dig that back.
Yeah.
Because we looked at it for last year, but
I'd say we're in there's some that are higher.
Sure.
And some that are lower, and I don't know what their overall costs are. Some contract out their entire program. So I think Rochester contract, just as a local real close to us, contracts their entire program out. So while they have a set fee, the entire program is contracted out to a vendor to provide the services. So there is no other cost.
So they know where they're at per meal regardless.
Right. So
that'd be a good number to have, just kind of where we sit. The rest of the state or the county or something.
Other questions on this data?
I will say this is thank you, Patrick, for this study. It's the result of a recommendation in the audit for some time now. So it was something that accounting has been asking us to do, and the result is showing that it's not supporting itself.
Anything else?
Okay. So to segue into then the next item.
Fee schedule.
Also informational. We wanted to present to you where we're currently at with student fees and other fees, across the district. And again, some proposed or possible considerations. We had a conversation about this in the Finance Committee, so that's where some of these numbers here really come from. And this is, again, just for board overall feedback and to give us some guidance or some input. We'd be coming to you later this spring with a more formal presentation and recommendation to say, where are you comfortable in setting our school fees. But you can see where our current fees are at for the different areas, where we would potentially propose some increases to continue to, as costs continue to rise, we have to recognize that. Food service being the largest one here, I think. And then there's one on here for technology fee. That's a brand new one. I think we've had some general conversations about this as how to continue to fund the program and what's going on with the student needs in our technology. And at least for consideration is if the Finance Committee talked long and hard about this, and this was a number that at least they initially felt was one they wanted to present to the board, that there could potentially be a technology fee for every student of $25 next year. And then of course the possible increase for the other areas that are listed. Any feedback or any conversations or any comments, questions?
What was the rationale for technology fee?
Well, partly because of the addition of Chromebooks and the addition of, things such as bandwidth and, those infrastructure needs too. As we grow and grow, needing to offset some of that cost. Because we talked a lot about, do we charge students to use Chromebooks? But we've had, so many donated as well, and we've already purchased a lot. So, how do you tell one student that they need to pay for theirs and then other students that they're going to use one that we've already purchased? And so we've just kind of talked about that's our desire, or has been for quite some time, is to get more Chromebooks and then, get those in place as much as possible. And have tried to have that in our line items for our budget, but fortunately the foundation has helped out quite a bit over the years, and I think they will probably continue to, because they've been pretty supportive. But trying to get more and more into the hands of, our big next goal is high school too, middle school and high school.
And Chad's done a lot, and as you've seen recently with the infrastructure, the changing and the needs, and getting us so that everybody's up and running and working at the highest speed possible, and we're not experiencing lag time. So it's more than just a computer that's needed. It's the entire infrastructure and the support that goes behind that. And this would no way cover that cost of that program, but it helps offset a little, and in a time when the state isn't meeting their goals and meeting their obligations, unfortunately, the only other place we have to go is to our community.
So are we leaning that direction, that we would just, from a fee perspective, figure out a way that's just the way we handle it, or are we going to lean towards sort of that lease to own concept?
Like I said, the lease to own, and Chad, do you mind addressing that too? There are some drawbacks to it too.
Basically from where we are right now with the 5th through 8th grade program, that we keep those as a purchase by the district type of situation, that when you get out to the high school like areas, you could actually have that device where they could buy it from the district over a 4-year period and take it with them to college. There's that type of device that they can last that long and they can be used in those manners. But again, we just haven't really sat down and got that, this is the direction we want to go on the district type of mentality, and so we looked at this as an option.
One of the drawbacks that Chad said too is that right now he can control them. He knows, how he can number them and label them and make sure they're all here, and he can deploy when he needs to push apps out or whatever. So you give up a little bit of that. Yep. There are ways to manage it, but
right. Basically what you have to do is you either have to have them, we have to buy a license for all those Chromebooks and then we manage them basically from there, or we let them, you basically would allow us to use it as our managed device for 4 years, and then if we get rid of it, we'd have to do the same cycle again in 4 years, so every year we'd be buying a new batch of them still. If we get them all purchased by the district, we can actually make that longevity last a little bit longer and have that device for more years than what we originally would under a purchase and sell type program that we have in the district. So there's still a lot of options.
We're not ruling it out, I don't think. I think it's a good option. It's worked very well for Rochester, is what we understand.
This is the way that, from a district perspective, it cuts the cost of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I had I attended the spring dinner meeting, the ISB spring dinner meeting, and Susie Morrison spoke there. She's the deputy superintendent, chief education officer in Illinois, and talked about the technology needs and commitments that districts are going to need to make for the future, because the park assessment and all the new assessments are all going to be online, and the feedback is immediate. So in order to keep up with the needs of the future, we're going to have to make some decisions and investments now, so that and the upgrade of the connectivity that we approved a month or so ago is a good example. If we don't have the transmission capabilities, we're not going to be able to do it. Our kids won't be able to keep up with other school districts. So,
and it goes well beyond the state, the park assessments and that. Every district that I've seen out there that has gone this route is just blossomed in the way that they, portray information to students, and they get that constant access to information that they haven't gotten in the past. So, I mean, it isn't just park assessments, it's everything.
and our own assessments, because the feedback's immediate versus the paper, which we would wait for months for the data to come back, and by that time the kids are gone to the next level, and we're reacting instead of being proactive. So there's a lot of things to think about here on the technology front.
Thanks, Jim. I know that $250 is the most we can charge for driver's ed. Any idea on what that costs us to provide it?
I
And
don't
what would be
have
and the options to not to provide it?
It's expensive, yeah. I mean, we've talked about that I think when we've done budget reductions, we've talked about that reduction, because the big cost there obviously is your staff, and that you could reduce down some staff if you didn't have behind the wheel. We still have to offer, by law, you have to offer classroom, but the behind the wheel is what, the expensive part. And we had talked about it in the past and just really said that, that's something that I think parents really hope that the school provides. And so we didn't put it on, we almost kind of had it as a tier 2 conversation last year, and we didn't decide to go ahead and put it forward as a reduction, but it was something we talked about.
I do think that's a really good idea, Jim, to get the numbers and look at that.
I know we did last year, but I have to pull it back up.
Patrick, have you put any numbers together, what this proposal would have, what kind of an increase?
Just the technology side, we estimate would bring in at least 90,000, potentially more, depending on the number that qualify or would actually make the payment. Just as an example of that one number.
How much?
90,000.
Just for the one?
Just for the one number. I don't, no, not yet, not all in. Because last year's were based on, obviously, like the food and things like that were based on last year's numbers. We have new enrollment and things, so I need to put new numbers to those.
Did milk go up that much?
It will.
No, that's part of that 50% increase. That was just looking at all of those.
We were losing money on...
It's the whole program. So you could certainly pick and choose. Certain items could be much higher, certain items wouldn't see the increase. Milk could stay closer to the same, another lunch could be $1 more.
We can look at more of a percent rather than
I just did a flat number across all the items just to give you what would it take to get there.
I agree, Steve. I was surprised.
You know, they drink milk in the morning for break or something.
Thank you.
You can know your cost. 10 kids.
Prices are going up, but in that particular area.
We got that ground at ball. Can we get some
Yeah, get some cows out. Teach the kids to hag and use milk on them.
I mean, I know there's significantly fewer adults than students, but I was
We definitely agreed in Finance Committee that adult meals maybe we need to increase, so. The other conversation, I'm sorry, Lisa, the other conversation too that has been, that we've kicked around for a couple of years as we've talked about fees, is the idea of giving an overall, rather than an athletic fee, giving an overall activity fee. And that was brought up to me again as a suggestion that do we want to consider an activity fee for every student, regardless of who participates? And the person that proposed it said, well, maybe that would encourage more kids to get involved. The flip side is then would there be complaints from people that say, my child doesn't participate in anything, and so why am I paying this fee? And the idea was then they could have like a free pass to all games and all, that type of thing. So there's something a benefit that they get. But it was another concept, trying to think outside the box about how to help, bring in more revenues for the district for those that use it. But like I said, there are pros and cons to it all. The other idea is, what other areas can you charge fees for? Are there other classes or other, areas that you can charge fees? We in our finance committee meeting, talked about dual credit. So those are all just kind of trying to think outside the box and looking at what other districts do as well is important to this.
Because we raised fees pretty significantly last year, correct? So, and now we're talking about doing it
right
again.
I don't know, was that significant?
Well,
we hadn't for a while.
The book rental fees.
Yeah. We hadn't raised them for quite some time, so.
Again, this is one of those things that, as I pointed out with food service, if you have small incremental increases on a year-to-year basis, as opposed to, okay, if it's 5 years and we're going to raise it $20, where if you raised it $5 a year, it wouldn't be it's not the same.
Exactly.
So.
We've held off for several years on increasing fees. So.
Okay, this will come back to us later on as a recommendation.
Just for conversation at this point. Yeah. So if you have any thoughts along the way, or if you hear from community members, then let us know if there are other areas that.
Thank you, Betsy.
Any other questions for Patrick? Thanks, Patrick. Thank you, Patrick. All right, moving on to communications. Betsy, you want to throw up their future meeting dates, because I don't want to talk about them. There they are.
They're there.
And that's just for April. Well, there's a couple in March there. This week. Huh?
You can have copies.
Yeah.
I'll bring it to them.
So.
I think we need a raise in pay.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
So those are the, anything else on the future meeting dates, Carrie? Nothing?
No, it's just this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then this is, this section, opportunity for visitors to address the school board concerning any topic. Anybody wish to address the board tonight on any topic? We'll move on then to roundtable.
Oh, the first thing on the round table, we do not get paid. I just joke. School board members do not, in the state of Illinois, are not paid.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me do one thing real quick here before, at the beginning of roundtable. And this has to do with what Susan was asking about earlier with the minutes of meetings that are now going on as additional minutes to those meeting dates. To say that during former Superintendent Gillum's tenure, 3 different board presidents and their trustees relied on his experience and expertise with regard to which matters were appropriate for discussion in closed session. Upon administrative and attorney review of closed session minutes for this period, it appears some of those matters were discussed in closed session of regular and special meetings that should have been discussed in open session. Any such portion of the minutes for the meetings of November 24th, 2008, April 27th, 2009, June 30th of 2009, July 30th, 2009, March 22nd, 2010, April 26th, 2010, May 24th, 2010, September 27th, 2010, October 25th, 2010, November 22nd, 2010, April 25th, 2011, May 23rd, 2011, June 20th, 2011, July 25th, 2011, August 22nd, 2011, September 22nd, 2011, September 26th, 2011, October 17th, 2011, November 7th, 2011, November 14th, 2011, November 28th, 2011, September 17th, 2013, and October 28th, 2013 have been posted as additional minutes on those dates in the district's website. So, okay. Then we had a couple of things.
Does anybody have a point?
I have something, but
Okay.
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Mine is lengthy. Please go ahead.
Okay. This is a brief, just a statement, and that is, ISBE just recently published the listing of financial profile scores adjusted for late payments for the entire state of Illinois. Using fiscal year 13 data, 862 school districts were categorized in 4 categories as follows. The top category is recognition, followed by financial review, then early warning, and the last is financial watch. Of the 862 districts in the state of Illinois, only 85 schools had a lower profile score than Ball Chatham. This is per the ISBE website. I'm mentioning this tonight not to look back, but to state as we look forward in the development of the board's financial goals and the development of all future budgets to attain those goals, that we monitor and that we develop and monitor our budgets so that we can prevent the district from going into the watch category. The results for the requirements that the ISBE undertakes in the financial watch category is that we are monitored very closely. If our financial status is so weakened that we may have to be, and I say that in a contingent way, qualified for a financial oversight panel. Now, I'm only saying this because we have annually a tool that helps us try and claw our way up to a stronger financial profile score. And that's all I'm asking the board members to think about as we develop fiscal board goals and approve budgets.
Thank you. Yes, Linda.
Yes, I feel like we need a brain gym break. I'd have you all get up and do jumping jacks as I would my students, but I'm not going to do that. Aren't you glad? I have a statement that I would like to make. A Board of Education meeting is a meeting in public and not a public meeting. There are 2 opportunities on each agenda for citizens to speak, and hearing from the public is an important element of governing. Past practice dictates that the board does not comment, answer questions, or engage in public debate during these times. As a board member, this can be very frustrating, and I feel compelled to address my fellow board members and community on several issues that have captured our focus over the last few months, perhaps years. As the member of the Board of Education, a past principal, classroom teacher, and parent, I can name at least 20 school board members in my recent memory, and many more who have served and serve today to provide the best educational opportunities for the students in our district. Board membership is very fluid. New members are elected to join the board every 2 years. Teachers, lawyers, accountants, business people, farmers, parents, and grandparents have come together to serve our district to make it the great place it is today. However, I believe all decisions, through the years, the board members, myself included, have made decisions based on information available and provided to us or our own layperson research. Some of these decisions have proven the test of time to be good decisions. Others have not. That will always be the case. However, I do believe all decisions were made with the belief that our schools and community would be better for their action. I feel very confident that decisions by the board were and are not made for political or financial gain. Not everyone will agree with all of the decisions made, and sitting boards often must answer questions dealing with decisions made before their time. A perfect example of this is the use of our reserve funds or savings to build a new elementary school. This decision was made by a previous board entirely different from the current board. Recognizing the financial times, the board at that time decided to use its reserves or savings to build a scaled-down version of Glenwood Elementary. Was spending down our reserves a good idea? The previous Board of Education thought so, and so did the community in a referendum put before them. When asked where did our millions in reserves go, it went to provide a new building for our growing student population. We had a problem, and we dealt with it. State funding continues to be an issue. Today, our school district is better prepared to handle the lack of state funding because our board, our superintendent, and staff are vigilant in their oversight. Superintendent Ruby has taken difficult steps to achieve a balanced budget. The cuts to staff were especially difficult, and I appreciate her efforts and the efforts of the previous board to accomplish that daunting task. We had a problem, and we addressed it. Our focus on the board has indeed shifted from legal to financial matters. Violations of the Open Meeting Act have been a topic of much discussion among the current Board of Education. As a board member, I can assure you it is never my intent to violate the law, any law. The lawsuits against our district and the hefty financial cost for not adhering to a law that is sometimes ambiguous has been very disconcerting. Every board member must complete an Open Meetings Act training that lasts just a few hours. Believe me, a few hours is not enough to fully comprehend the scope of this act as it has impacted our district. My computer moves faster than I do. Yeah. We have an Open Meetings Act is something that we are required to do, and a question that has come about through the Open Meetings Act is, does an individual member have the right to listen to the verbatim record of a closed session? The answer, generally no. What does that mean? Why not? Who decides? I have read pages and pages of legal documentation, legislative interpretations, and sometimes conflicting legal opinion. Do we need our lawyer to review agendas and attend board meetings? Is that how we want to spend our taxpayer funds? Sometimes what seems to make legal sense does not make common sense. Here's what I know for sure. The board relies on those who should know and should be trusted to guide us to determine what constitutes the parameters of an open meeting. I appreciate Superintendent Ruby's current oversight in complying with our Open Meeting Act. When there is a problem, we deal with it. To avoid these issues in the future, I would like to propose that this Board of Education and subsequent boards with new members have extensive individual board training by a lawyer specializing in Open Meetings Act that will give us more detail. I understand that this training will have a cost, but again, when problems occur, we deal with them. Another issue that is taking up a lot of focus, time, and resource is answering FOIA requests. The Freedom of Information Act, FOIA, is an important part of transparency and the right of the public to know and understand how public